You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio. WZYE 95.9 FM.
Of thine eye, hide me under the shadow of thy wing, O Lord, my Savior. It's so hard to deal with personal struggle. So sad when you feel alone in your trouble. It's real hard when you want to talk to a brother. It's so bad because of how some look at you after. So Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover my head. Satan want me dead. Cover my back from human attack. So Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me. People see you smile, but don't know the hurt that you're feeling. Even as God's child, at times your heart does be bleeding. Where can you go when you're really looking for healing? Who know how to flow when your soul needs some restoring? So Jesus, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover me home from evils unknown. Cover my feet so I'll never retreat. Oh Lord, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover my brother. Cover my sister. Them who under pressure. Cover the preacher. Every church worker. The young believer. Cover the worship leader and intercessor, every gospel minister. Cover. Jesus alone is the one who has the real answer. The one on the throne is the true and loving Father. He will hold your hand and keep you from going under. He will make you stand and let you know he's a fixer. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it, Jesus. Cover me. Cover me mind. You know the struggle sometimes. Cover me mouth that the wrong thing wouldn't come out. Oh Lord, cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Cover me while you fix it. Jesus, cover me. Cover the Christian in the midst of aggression with the power of your right hand. Jesus, cover them helpless children. Jesus, defend them. Send help from heaven. Jesus, cover all them radio stations that blessing the nation. Grant divine protection. Jesus, cover me.
Truer words were never spoken. The less you associate with some people, the more your life will improve. Anytime you tolerate mediocrity in others, it increases your mediocrity. An important attribute in successful people is their impatience with negative thinking and negative acting people. As you grow, your associates will change. Some of your friends will not want you to go on. They will want you to stay where they are. Friends that don't help you climb will want you to crawl. Your friends will stretch your vision or choke your dream. Those that don't increase you will eventually decrease you. Consider this. Never receive counsel from unproductive people. Never discuss your problems with someone incapable of contributing to the solution, because those who never succeed themselves are always first to tell you how. Not everyone has a right to speak into your life. You are certain to get the worst of the bargain when you exchange ideas with the wrong person. Don't follow anyone who's not going anywhere. With some people you spend an evening. With others, you invest it. Be careful where you stop to inquire for directions along the road of life. Wise is the person who fortifies his life with the right friendships. If you run with wolves, you will learn how to howl. But if you associate with eagles, you will learn how to soar to great heights. A mirror reflects a man's face, but what he is really like is shown by the kind of friends he chooses. The simple but true fact of life is that you become like those with whom you closely associate, for the good and the bad. Note, be not mistaken. This is applicable to family as well as friends. Yes, do love, appreciate, and be thankful for your family, for they will always be your family, no matter what. Just know that they are human first, and though they are family to you, they may be a friend to someone else and will fit somewhere in the criteria above. In prosperity, our friends know us. In adversity, we know our friends. Never make someone a priority when you are only an option for them. If you are going to achieve excellence in big things, you develop the habit in little matters. Excellence is not an exception. It is a prevailing attitude.
Let me say a special hello to all the WZYE 95.9 FM listeners. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, it's in the village with the dad triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. And of course, we come here every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. That's Tuesday and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, we have an early start tonight because we have interviews starting at 7:30 p.m. So we don't want to waste any time tonight. You know, of course, it doesn't matter what color t-shirt you have on. You have on a blue t-shirt, you have on a burgundy t-shirt, you have on a maroon t-shirt. Each and everyone is welcome in the village with the dad triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. Doesn't matter what planet you're from Mazatania, Xenoranius, Venuranius, Sonoranius. Each and everyone is welcome in the village with the dad triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. Let me say a special welcome to my Palo Seconian friend, by the way of Sally Bay, through Marabella, no other than Thomas, the commissioner in Newark, Marshall Nisbet, boy. Tommy, welcome.
Good evening, my brother. How are you today?
Today is an excellent Tish's day.
That's wonderful. That's fabulous.
Here we go. Yeah? I said that kind of short tonight, Tommy, but.
Well, you were pretty quick tonight in starting the show, so
we're trying to get. We have interviews coming up.
Mine's on time, right?
Yeah. We got to do it. Let me say welcome to no other than Waveney, Benskin, Diana, McDonald, the poet, the poetress, the motivational speaker, by way of Barbados, on her way to TNT, by way of St. Augustine, no other than Waveney, Benskin, McDonald, Diana, boy.
I thought you starting the show early. Hey, Tommy, I like your blue shirt, boy.
Oh, thank you.
I like your blue shirt. You're really welcome in the village.
Yes.
I gonna start some bacchanal. I did some physical therapy and oh Lord. Wait. So there.
Was you love doctor the therapist?
No man, there. It's for the pain, my herniated disc. Man, let me tell you, these people, them in care, no? Them in care, they just stretching you any which way and
Oh.
making you use with this muscle and the next muscle. And I
Oh.
say, hello. Can we do the next muscle next year?
Oh goodness.
God, I tell you. And then I had to go sit on the bicycle and cycle. Man, I'm physical therapist, no joke. But a day. Whew.
Okay, there we go. So let me say good afternoon to Nadia. Nadia was first in the village. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Nadia
Good
says good night.
afternoon, Nadia.
Nadia,
Nadia, Stormy was a good a companion dog today. He recognized I was in pain, and he just he laid with me, put his leg, I laid on my lap, and just stayed with me. Yeah,
oh,
Nadia's dog.
Nadia says good night, Tommy. You get
Good
some money.
evening. Good evening, Nadia.
Yeah, she said good night to Dana Benskin as well. She said good night to Juna, Lana, Rose, Miss Coover, Denise G. Yeah, Denise G getting in the mix. Yeah, Rennie Mohammed, boy, yeah, but
Let's hear what poem Randy coming with tonight.
yeah, we gotta see. Looking forward to them poem. Man, poetic, you know.
Let's see what poem he coming with
And I
tonight.
guess we're praying for so up as well and safe. Yeah. And of
Let's
course,
see.
we have Bonnie Roberts. Good afternoon to all my beautiful friends that are locked on to the ladies, Nadia, to Keisha, Joan, and most importantly, the Storm. Blessings. Yeah, boy. Rennie Cummings. Hey, Vonnie Cummings second tonight, yes, boy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
You know why Khadijah Ameen coming on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Bonnie Roberts says to Ansem and Tommy, trust you guys are okay, enjoying the nice weather. For Ansem, I hope you are forgiven by your P&M loyalists. Okay.
Ooh, then you.
Uh, hey, here we go. You know, Tommy and Diana, all that remind me to send my email so I can get a drum roll for Dr. Love when he come in. These these poems he's sending out to Diana these days. I don't know, you know.
He sent a poem to me. He sent a poem to the girls in the village, not me.
So you're not a girl in the village?
Yeah,
I in the village, I'm not a girl.
I haven't seen him
I'm a woman.
I haven't seen him put
I woman.
anybody else's name to the poem that he sent out so far other than Diana.
Okay,
Huh?
woman.
You like bacchanal. You like them regular PNMites. That's what a bacchanal you like.
No, I haven't seen anyone else's name. All right, so we're gonna see if he puts Diana name to anything. Okay, all right. We just
Ah.
all right. So let me see. Say good night, brothers and sis. Love in the house. Great love is all I bring. All right. Next one, he says, sending out respectable, attractive, effective, positive love to all the ladies. What boy? Once that tips, boy. Man, tiving tonight, yes. Well, look. So said, so shall be done. Look. Diana said, love gets stale. There are other things to share between male and female.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, look at Tommy. I
Uh-huh.
just said he was making the poems to Diana. Diana says he was making it to all the ladies. The
Ladies in the
first
house.
word in his poem is
Diana.
Diana said, love gets stale. There are other things to share between male and female. To keep you excited, naughty things I could recite. Wanna
Yeah.
Oh God, oh.
Hey.
The man, if you like to know high notes, well, let me start from the top. Let me rewind. Let me
I
rewind.
go in and get Richard Ramroop for he. The
Yeah,
big man.
it says, Diana said, love gets stale. There are other things to share between male and female.
I go in and get Richard Ramroop.
To keep you excited, naughty things I could recite. On a by
Mm.
chance, I make you sweat. You ask for thunder, I bring a storm.
Hi.
Oh God!
Oh yes, oh yes.
Anybody?
Well, we said, he asked for it. Let me
Hey,
see.
You asked for thunder.
let me, yeah. He said,
Ask for thunder.
ask for thunder, I bring you the storm.
Oh, boy.
Oh God! Yeah. I'd give you a round of applause on that one. Yeah. The man went back to the drawing board tonight, boy. You tell me?
Diana, take a bow.
He
Take a
bring
bow,
this,
Diana.
he get the storm. The storm will blow him away. You better be careful.
No, he say you ask for thunder,
I
and he's
asked for thunder.
going to bring you the storm.
I look like I want stress.
Oh God! Any that he's our boss. He's our boss. All right.
You would have to go to the doctor and have him make you ride bicycle anymore.
Yeah.
I good. I will go to the doctor.
Hey, our next one, you know. Hear this. Dr. Love have love for all them mistress. Sweet
Uh-uh.
belly. Make you feel like butterfly in your belly.
Uh-uh.
You have weed, take a pull. I have love to keep your belly full.
Why?
Santi man say,
Wait.
hey, Diana, the man, Diana, Diana, you can't write something before the night done, Diana.
No, leave me alone. I'm not in a mood tonight. Leave me alone.
God, well, yes, hey, you know, that's two in a row, you know. The man say, no, just one now. Let me repeat that one, eh? Hear this. Dr. Love her love for all them mistress. Sweet like jelly. Make you feel like a butterfly in your belly. If you have weed, take a pull. I have love to keep your belly full. Son, hey, God, partner.
Uh-oh.
He ain't gonna keep my belly ain't gonna be full of no damn weed. I can tell him that.
Darrell, welcome. Yeah?
With Daryl in the house. That's the fig man. Daryl fix ready for me.
No, it's not Darrell, it's Richard Rambo.
Richard
Yeah,
Rambo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
you try that.
Getting the
Try
guys
that.
mixed up, Diana.
No, she trying to shift the focus. She trying to do like what some party just do, you know? Shift the focus.
Daryl
Shift,
fix ready for me.
shift the goalpost. Whoa. Blessings and love, villagers. Live life. Thank you very much. What was that? You say what? You are stunned. When you throwing talk like swordfish. That is it. Okay. When you throwing talk like swordfish. The man ain't throwing no talk.
Sharp. He's sharp.
The man lyrically inclined.
Oh.
That is what it is. The man,
Yeah, let him keep it up. Let him keep it up. His wife gonna put his behind out too.
when he come, he didn't have all them lyrics. All of a sudden, since Diana, Diana is a poet. The man started to get poetic with us here in the village, boy.
He's
What?
inspired.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
waxing. He gonna be raining out the house. He like keep it up.
So, folks, we have coming up at 7:30. We have the MP for St. Augustine, Khadijah Ameen, and then we have the MP for Mayaro, Rushton Paray. So, you know, we're gonna talk to them about local election. We're gonna talk to them quite a few things that happening in Trinidad and Tobago today. Hey, Tommy, I was
Yes.
looking up something, eh? So there's 14 municipal corporations in Trinidad, right? And
Okay.
each one of them have certain amount of councillors, right? I was trying to figure out how many councillors how many of the regional corporations that UNC has, and how many does PNM have, right? Let me see if I could figure that out right here. How many? What's just going on there? Hold on, eh? How many? Ah, boy, what is that one, boy? What? Them thing just type up once that thing's let's do, boy. I ain't all of that, now. All right. How many council does UNC Means only this means operate. Will it be operate or run? Mm, mm. Let's see. Let's see. Back in. Let's see that.
Control.
Control. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a better word to. Okay. No. How many corporation does UNC control? Any corporations? How many municipal corporation? I'll put it up. How many municipal corporations? Okay, so it says the United National Congress currently controls 7 out of the 14 municipal corporations. Ah, ah, I'll have to find that out. Because somehow they say they control Port of Spain City Corporation. I don't think the UNC control Port of Spain City Corporation.
That's false.
Yeah, that's false. That's false. So I want Laventel Regional Corporations. I don't think so. Let me see something.
Could be. No, that doesn't sound right.
That don't sound right. Let me see. All right. All right. They're not giving me that right information. So we'll find out from them.
Well, Khadijah would have to write it right off the top of her head.
Right. She'll be with it. And then we can figure out how many councillors they have in each one of those
Corporation.
each one of those corporations. Well, I think Port of Spain has 15, San Juan Laventel has 21. It appears that the most out of all of these are 21 councillors. I wonder if that does include aldermen too, right? Anyway, we'll find that out. So,
So, what else is happening?
right. So, of course, they also have a lot of flooding in Trinidad and Tobago, from what I understand.
Absolutely, especially in South.
Yeah, and is it really global warming or climate change, or is
All
some
of
of it
Or cloud seeding.
No, it's climate
cloud
change.
seeding, or
Remember,
Or is it
Tommy?
some of it-
Cloud seeding.
Cloud seeding is a reality when there's no precipitation, then you see the cloud.
But
But
when you have too much precipitation, people are speculating that they're doing
no,
cloud seeding. I be just playing devil's advocate here.
no, we could clearly see the systems coming across the Atlantic.
I hear they get a helicopter to help fight crime too, Papa.
Hey, anything that
Say
works,
good
as
night,
long as it works.
Kenyan.
I say, boy, they waving some big trinket in front of people eye, boy. A helicopter to help fight crime, and them bandit better watch out now.
But there was a little piece of bacchanal that came about the HSF losing a ton of money last year, and of course,
Yes,
the Minister of Finance put out a document saying that is
We do not
totally false.
address the $6 million loss.
He said
they do a what?
You didn't address the $6 million loss.
he said it's
We go ahead,
totally
Tommy.
false.
It's totally
From what I
false, but
understand-
bring out the paperwork and tell the people then how it's false.
Well, there's an article that's been sent to me today that gives a descriptive as to what happened and how the information was misconstrued. And
Well, we have to bring my Mr. Dr. Arjun.
well,
So Tommy,
mm-hmm.
was there ever $6 million loss? $6 million loss, right? Was there ever $6 billion loss at any time?
In the HSF,
Yes.
he says that the big picture wasn't looked at. That it's up and down, but eventually, what happened is that there were no losses. There was a gain instead of a loss. I don't know. He said that the Express is making mischief.
Yeah, trust me. But let me bring in Dr. Arjun to clarify the mischief there.
All right. So what we gonna do? You know, after we finish with Khadijah and Rushton Paray, we gonna call Shane Mohammed to find out.
Shane Mohammed would know.
Yeah, he would know what exactly is this, because it's my understanding that loss wasn't recently. That loss was sometime in 2022.
Yeah.
Right. The end of the year, September 2022.
Well,
there was
the
a
Minister
$6 million
Finance
loss, but since that,
but there was a loss.
Minister of Finance says that there were no losses. That it was a win-win. But
it was a win. It was a win-win. I would like to hear from a knowledgeable economist.
Well,
yes.
I think what could have happened is that you kind of spinning top in mud. So let me read this. There was a release. Hold on. There was a release from. You had to look at both sides of the divide. Let me see something. There was a release that was put out. Let me see something. Okay, here we see. Here it is. Here. Hold on. I'm gonna read that. Okay, so it says that this was a release from leader of the opposition. The decline was 6 billion TTD in the HSF in just 1 year, as confirmed by the central bank, is a clear indication of the government incompetence and negligence. The government has collapsed and is trying to wastefully spend as much as it can before they demit. The recent article in the Express newspaper reporting a decline of 913.5 million US, or some 6 billion in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund for the financial year ended September 30, 2022. That's what I thought. Shed lights on the Rowley and inward negligence and incompetence. Right? So it goes on to tell you that the government withdrawal of over 1.9 billion or 12.9 billion from the fund over the past 7 years and 9 months have severely undermined its purpose and depleted its resources. So that is from. So we gain one story from Colin Burt.
Yes, politically, and we could clearly see. I would read the Colin article a little bit later. It's pretty lengthy.
Yeah, we read that too as well. All right, but Tommy, there's also statements stating that I want to read this. Let me read this. Let me get this up here. Now listen to this, right? Listen to this. No, that's not it. That's not it right there. Let me get something else. Oh, here, this is it here. Right? Listen to this, right? This is a quote from the Minister of Finance, Colin Burt. This is what he said. Quote, I want to repeat that over 65% of properties will attract a property tax of between $540 a year and $1,080 a year. Okay, I'm gonna stick up. I'm gonna stop right there. Tommy and Diana,
Oh,
what do you think that tells you that 65% of the property going to be taxed only 540 and 1,080 per year? Just off the top of your head. I'm not trying to test you guys or anything like that.
It
Just off
tells
the
me
top of the
it tells me that it's not going to be 3%.
mm-mm.
Off the top of my head.
okay. It's no, it is 3%.
But that means the value is going to be a lot less than we think it is.
All right. Okay. So here
Yeah.
here's what I
There's
where
gonna
that
be a lot of disparity in between there, uneven disparity, and who is going to be paying 540? It leaves room for a whole heap of corruption again.
no. I don't think any corruption.
Really? You don't see that?
No,
Okay.
no. I don't think corruption could come in that. But
You don't think?
yeah, the only way our corruption could come in is that, for example, right, in this country, you are taxed based on the assessed value of your property.
Correct.
And based being that you are taxed on the assessed value, you could go and appeal the taxes that you get,
This is
that
correct.
that they put on you. However, before you go and appeal, you have to go to the tax assessor in your town, right? So, for example, when I lived in Maplewood, South Orange Maplewood, I had to go to the tax assessor and see, how did they come to the value of my property tax, right? And when I look at my next door neighbor, and I'm saying that my next door neighbor house was bigger than my own, right? It looked nicer than my own, in my opinion. And I felt that he was paying less than me. They were paying less than me. And what happened is that they classify houses in different different levels. And based on the level, there's a certain percentage attached to that level. So the lower the level, the lower the tax, the higher the level, the higher the tax. So I was in a higher level than my neighbor. So I tell him, no. Oh, I could be in a high level. I should at least be in the same level as my neighbor or lower. Right? He looked at it. He said, let me do some work. And in the end, he agreed.
And you got a
And
reduction.
he put me in the same level as my
Yeah, but
neighbor.
this isn't properly run tax administered tax institution. This in Trinidad and Tobago. Who knows?
Well,
Oh, okay, y'all go ahead.
no, I think if you want to say that, when they do the assessment of rental value, there could be corruption in that.
That's what I mean. And is a person in Tobago going to pay the same thing as a person in Trinidad?
And someone
3%.
in Toco is not going to pay the same thing as someone in Port of Spain.
No, but it's 3% across the board, though.
Yeah,
The
but
idea is that it's 3%. A person in Westmoreland is going to pay more taxes than a person in Laventille. But a person in Westmoreland can afford 3%, while a person in Laventille may not be able to afford 3%.
But then the values in Westmoreland are going to be much, much higher than Laventille, of course. So
absolutely. However, right, the 3%, right, Tommy and Diana, if I can afford something, I will be able to pay a higher price for something, right?
correct.
If my salary is higher, I will be able to afford better and bigger, nicer things.
Correct.
Right? If my salary is lower, I have to pinch and minimize and budget and everything for the things that I spend.
Yeah.
Right? So if all are we paying the same percentage, 3%, that's not fair. That's unfair. So let me finish.
Well, it would only be fair if I'm paying 3% of one and you're paying 3% of 5. Because I got 1 and my neighborhood is 1 and your neighborhood is 5. Yes?
No, I don't understand, Tommy.
Zone. How they gonna do it?
Let's say
No, that's not. But that's not the way it is, though. It's based on annual rental value.
Yes,
But Sam, I have a problem with that. I have my little whatever I inherit, however I get it. How you will come and tell me how? Yeah, I'm saying, yeah. Okay, 65% selling. You gonna tell me that my property is worth X amount rental value? How you gonna do that?
well, if your property is in Westmoreland and that's where you acquired or what your inheritance was, and my property is in Toko, that's where my inheritance was. Of course, you would have to pay much more because it's a high scale,
Why I have to pay much more in Westmoreland?
because it's a higher scale neighborhood, higher scale, and
Oh, it's a higher scale neighborhood.
yes,
Okay. So let me go down that road. Higher scale neighborhood. Then therefore I will be demanding higher scale services.
absolutely.
I don't see
So
nothing wrong with that. I don't see nothing wrong with that. It's the same thing in
so
here. It's the same thing in here. When you compare South Orange Maplewood to Newark, for
wait, wait,
example,
wait, wait. Wait, answer. I know where you're going. Let me finish my point. So a person in love until now, the more economically depressed area, let me put it, all they'll come from here. What kind of services they gonna be getting?
you'll get
The same,
services.
the same as the person in out in wherever out in Goodwood or wherever y'all call just now, Maraval. But I thought services to be rendered is for Trinbagonian citizens.
It should be
But
across
no,
the board.
but here we go. The Maraval's gonna get a higher quality of services as opposed to people in the more economically depressed area. What kind of service them gonna get?
Well,
I don't
Well,
know.
look at it this way, right? When you make the comparison to Newark and you look the comparison to South Orange Maplewood, Newark is right next to South Orange, right? When you leave Newark and you go into South Orange, you could immediately see the difference.
but
Immediately.
Newark has stepped up big time,
They have stepped up big time. But I'm just showing it as an example because in South Orange, they pay such high taxes. People could be in $40,000 a year in taxes.
right?
Yeah.
$40,000 a year.
And
Oh, Lord. So
Yeah,
so my so my little $3,700 a drop in their bucket.
absolutely.
drop in the bucket. So let's bring in, we have
Boy.
MP Rushton Paray who has joined us. We're not going to wait for because you is going to join us shortly. So let me say a special welcome to the MP for Mayaro. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Rushton Paray. Welcome back to Indie Village with the Dad Triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. Of course, we have with us also Diana and Tommy. How are you doing, Mr. Paray?
Uh, Doing well. A bit tired after a hectic day today, dealing with flooding in the area and so on. But we're managing well. I think God blessed us a bit. I think the tides were in our favor today. I think when the bulk of the water came down, um, the tides were low. So instead of getting 5 and 6 feet of water, we got around 18 to 24 inches. So we're hoping overnight as the tide goes down again, we should see some dissipating of the water overnight. That's the good news. The bad news is that I understand from Thursday we have 3 tropical depressions on its way one after the other that is going to be dumping a lot of rain on us over the weekend. So it's going to be a very interesting weekend in Trinidad and Tobago and I guess the Southern Caribbean over this next couple of days.
Mm.
So MP, is it normal? Are there any times when rain fall and you don't get flooding in Mayaro?
The thing about it, it's twofold, right? How do you measure the performance of drainage? So historically in Mayaro here, we've had problems with the Ministry of Works and a very aggressive drainage program in terms of clearing water courses, desilting the river courses, and so on to make sure that when the rain comes down, the water can dissipate quickly. So a good drainage system wouldn't prevent flooding, but it will move the water very fast. So rather than the water stays up for 5 and 6 hours, within an hour, the water could dissipate. So that's how you measure a good drainage system. Over the last couple of years, we've had problems getting the Ministry of Works, the regional corporations to have an aggressive cleaning schedule. I can tell you for the last year, there have been some improvement in the drainage system in terms of clearing of water courses, desilting the river mouths, and so on. But we have some problems in terms of that can be resolved from the legislative side that will help the issues of flooding. So we have, a lot of issues around illegal developments where people are clearing lands and they're building homes and they don't have town and country planning. So that's a big issue. You have an issue of people changing the water courses. When they have their private land and they want to build something, they change the water course. They shrink the size of that piece of the water course, the water backs up. And it has very little policing from a town and country perspective. So when you add all of that, together with the fact that sometimes, the central government is not bringing the funds as fast as they could to even both the ministry and the local government ministry where the regional corporations operate. You have all of these issues bundling into one, and now you have the issue of climate change where you have quantity and velocity of the rainfall doubling and tripling. So it's like this massive problem culminating into one big issue where the slightest rain now, you have flooding in the area. So it requires a bit of physical change. It requires some legislative amendments in the law to protect or to direct the way how building and estate developments happen. And obviously you need the money at the ground level to get the backhoes and the river gangs and the gangs to clean the drains and so on. You need money to get those things happening. So that is the status we are at right now.
Mr. Paray, I know in Bermuda, they have minimal rainfall. They don't have a lot of rain. And the people build, the homeowners and people who are building are legislated to build roofs that drain the water off into catchments around the homes. Is that something Trinidad and Tobago can entertain? And
there is quite a bit of what you call rainwater harvesting that happens in an unscientific way. There are communities where you build water harvesting systems. But traditionally in rural areas in Trinidad and Tobago, for many, many years, people put up tanks, they run their spoutings around their homes. So they do get some water in their tanks for rainwater harvesting. What you found over the last couple of years, again, with the issues of climate change, you have during what we call the dry season, where you have less rainfall, we do have quite a bit of areas in rural Trinidad where there is no pipe-borne water. So there are areas where you have WASA that provides the service, and you have probably 20% of the time that there is water in the lines. It could even be less. So now the regional corporation has to double and try and service areas without water, service the WASA customers who don't have water, because at the end of the day, they are all tax-paying citizens. They are your burgesses as well. You can't tell them that the truck water is not for you. So it puts an additional burden. But to answer your question, there is no legislation in Trinidad that requires home to do any sort of rainwater harvesting. Perhaps it could be something that we can look at in terms of from the town and country planning position, in terms of new homes, new developments, that they must provide some sort of backup, cisterns, underground cisterns that can capture rainwater for even, use for the sewer systems, for the toilets and so on. Enable not to use potable water to put in your toilet systems and so on. Perhaps legislation can help us going forward in that.
So let me welcome Mrs. Khadijah Ameen, no stranger to individuality that triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. Welcome, Mrs. Ameen.
Thank you for having me.
Good night, Mr. Ameen.
Pleasure. Also, we have Tommy with us and Diana as well. So we were just talking with MP Rushton Paray with respect to the rain that come. Did you get was there any effect in St. Augustine, your burgesses, St. Augustine?
Thankfully, there were no serious adverse effects. We are still, of course, very vigilant. In December, the St. Augustine area, Bamboo, Valsayn South, Spring Village, and St. Augustine South in particular, were tremendously affected, devastated. You had water to the window height, pouring out of the windows in some cases, and people are still recovering. when I saw photographs of the flooding in South Trinidad today, it just reminded me of the situation we faced not too long ago, and the fact that what is required to prevent and minimize the flooding still has not been addressed adequately by the government. When you speak about raising the river banks, repairing the erosion to the major water courses so that the water will not spill over into the villages. When you talk about repairing the floodgates that are leaking and you have gallons of water just pouring back into the village, and if those things are repaired, you will not have that. You still have the pump man not showing up on a Sunday because the union doesn't allow them to work 2 Sundays in a row or something like that. And the ministry has not thought of anything to go around that, So if flooding happens on a Sunday, we might be the bad lucky Sunday. So I am not satisfied that the ministry has put everything in place in terms of the infrastructure, the riverbanks, the floodgates, the pumps, to minimize the flooding. I know that our councillors for the area have also been doing their part to ensure that the local water courses that take the water to the major water courses are clear, and they do that in conjunction with the regional corporation. The regional corporation's disaster management unit is the first one that has to respond, and so many times they don't have control over what is really required to prevent the flooding. And it is not impossible to prevent the flooding. I remember Greenvale in 2018. I remember Oropun in 2018. And since that, we have been, Oropun Gardens falls in St. Augustine constituency, but I know that the HDC has done work to secure the riverbanks, both in Greenvale and in Oropun, to replace the floodgate. When I went in there as MP, I remember asking for emergency works to be done, and it was addressed, and it was an area that was about to collapse. So, and Oropun Gardens has not experienced the flooding because we have been vigilant, but because the HDC has done what is required to secure the community, even though it is a low-lying area. So I really believe in every area where there is flooding, there are methods to prevent, there are methods to reduce, and the government has to do what is required in the dry season. I have had a lot of promises from Rohan Sinanan where Bamboo is concerned, where St. Augustine South and Spring Village is concerned. Some water courses have been cleared, but the major work that is really needed to secure the village, we are not comfortable that it has been done. And it is not an impossible task. The government has the money, and what it takes is political will, but I don't see them caring so much about the flooding. I don't know if it's because it is in opposition constituencies, because I do see the response when areas like Aruka and Lupino Bonner West experience flooding. The ministers are out on the ground with all the resources of the state behind them, and I would like the same response to all areas, whether they are represented by opposition or government MPs. But what I would like the focus to be on is the prevention.
So, MP Paray, I see you were shaking your head. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I totally endorse what Khadijah said, because we experience the same problem here. I don't think anything technically or from an engineering perspective we can solve the problem. While now, unfortunately, Khadijah spoke about, the small water courses going into the big water courses. As a coastal community, the Ottawa River is really where all the water from South Trinidad, Oropouche, Pool Valley, all the water comes down to Mafeking. And Mafeking is about 10 feet below sea level. So it's like in a little bowl. So the slightest amount of excessive rainfall, and it comes down the river and the tide is high, the water backs up. And last year in December, November, December last year, when we had a combination of a double trough event, we had some places we had up to 12 feet of water in some community. That's how bad it was. Now, over the years, I too, like MP Ameen, have been making pleas to the Ministry of Works. Okay, why can't we look at retention and detention ponds along that Ottawa River? Can we hold this water? We can hold this water to be used during the dry season for our farmers. We can create new ponds, new dams, use it for tourist attraction. there's so much things you can do to help alleviate. So rather than getting 10 feet of water, we might have to deal with 24 inches or 18 inches that can dissipate very, very quickly. So, but there is no will, as Khadijah said, there seems to be no political will to fix these things. I don't know if it's an opportunity for contractors to make money. Give somebody a job to do every time rather than fixing the problem. And we solve the problem once and for all. It is not happening. We experience it in Mayaro here, and my colleagues are experiencing it all through their constituencies, because we are singing the same song year after year after year. And we go to Parliament, we raise matters on the adjournment, raise matters during the budget debates, and it just falls on deaf ears. Nothing is being done. And what is being done is being done in very piecemeal ways that is not making any impact really to the lives of the citizens.
Mr. Paray,
Go ahead.
in this video, 10 feet below sea level would call for levees to be built.
Yeah.
Has it ever been brought to the fore?
No. What happened? The coastline is clearly above sea level, so you find the sea doesn't come into the land. But because some of these communities are in a bowl, when the water comes down the river and the tide is high, the water seeps into the bowl. And this is where you have communities like Mafikin, parts of Union. If you go further west into Navet, parts of that Kunapo Southern Main Road, these are all areas where these communities were built in these hollows. Now, remember, 30, 40 years ago, these were agricultural communities. There was no issue of flooding. A lot of the homes were built pre-date of Tongan country. So you find a lot of these communities developed in the old days. And that's why they are there. And now when you have, because of climate change, and you have, the issues of development now all over the place, the water is now coming into these homes, coming into these areas. So the issues of levees and so on is not an option for us there in Mayaro right now. We had some folks from the Delaware National Guard about 3 years ago up in Mayaro here. They were working with our disaster management unit, and they wrote a proposal for them, and they indicated some sort of berm levee type systems to keep the water from crossing the roadway. So you find even during a flooding situation, we could maintain transport communication to move medical persons, move patients, move goods and services to happen even during a flooding event as well. That proposal went to the ministry. I heard nothing about it since then. But we remain hopeful. I mean, we keep asking about it, and we remain hopeful that it can take 9 years.
I too have the St. Augustine constituency's southern border is the Caroni River, and that flows out into the ocean. And so many tributaries from the Cora River, the Tunapuna River, Makoya, the St. Joseph River, the Blackman Ravine flow from the northern range through Curep and past the Eastern Main Road and so on, and into the Caroni River. And you have that Caroni River basin that is prone to flooding in St. Augustine. There were numerous studies. There was the Caroni River Basin study. There were other studies with several recommendations. There was also an engineering study for the Valsayn South in particular, because Valsayn South was built decades ago, and it is low. And because of that, instead of water flowing out during a flood, you have water flowing in from one of the tributaries, the Waima River, and it reaches to the top of the street sign in one of the lowest areas. So, but you have had numerous studies and recommendations going to the minister, going to the government, and in fact, there are recommendations with projects within this study and how it can be implemented on a phased basis to eliminate and reduce the flooding. I don't think the minister has paid enough attention to those technical recommendations. And what I have found myself doing is making representation, not only to get that work done, but practically begging for flood relief grants to be provided to people. listen, people lost, I mean, $50,000-$60,000 worth of furniture, appliances. Some of them have to renovate their homes, do over their tiles, their electrical. It's dangerous. You can't even keep the electricity on after the flood. And the amount of repairs they have to do to their home, the $10,000 flood relief grant really is not sufficient. A lot of building materials have increased in price. And so while we are clamoring for hundreds of flood victims to get this flood relief grant of a maximum of 10,000, which could also be as low as 3,000, what I really want is for the recommendations in those studies to start to be implemented. And yes, they do include retention ponds, retention areas, even up on the hillside north of the Eastern Main Road, which is not in St. Augustine constituency, but it affects the volume of water that comes into the Caroni River Basin. And of course, on the southern side of the Caroni River is the Caroni East constituency. And my colleague, Dr. Rishi Sicharan, is also, and Dr. Mr. Dinesh Rambali are also battling in those areas. And it is similar to the Oropouche River Basin, where studies have been done. And my colleague Dave Tanku, cannot even walk into some of those areas that are severely affected. So I really want us to move away from the disaster response and go into the prevention, because there are solutions.
Go ahead, Ansel. Are we frozen?
I am hearing you fine.
Okay, so, all right. So yeah, you were frozen there for a little bit. So what we're gonna do, right, Khadijah? We're gonna go for a quick station identification. When we come back, right, we want to address, of course, local election is upcoming. You know, we want to talk about local election, which is very important. You know, but Khadijah, we want to talk about the situation where there was should I put a wall that was causing some difficulties, I think, in certain parts of Caroni with respect to flooding, and as well as the pump that may have been sabotaged previously that caused some
I will address those things, certainly.
Right, as soon as we come back, okay? So
yes.
Stick and stay, folks. It's in the village with the DAT triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. We have with us tonight two MPs, MP for Mayaro, Mr. Rushton Paray, and we have the MP for St. Augustine, Mrs. Khadijah Ameen. So stick and stay. It's in the village with the DAT triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. We'll be right back after the short message.
You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
Back with you. It's in the village with the DAT triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. We come to you every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. That's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. Before we go back to Khadijah, MP Rushton, did you want anything to add to what Ms. Ameen stated?
I mean, she was very clear, and I mean, we face some of similar issues, but because we're in on the eastern side, a lot of the land space where the detention and retention ponds and to add a bit of meandering to the existing Ottawa River can happen.
You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM.
The forested area falls under the Ramsar Convention, which is the protected forestry area. So if any work has to be done in there, we have to go to Parliament and we'll have to enact legislation that will farm out, if it's 100 acres or 200 acres, and take it out from under that Ramsar Convention. I don't know how difficult that is. I don't think it is a difficult procedure to bring to Parliament and get the 3/5 majority that is required. But when I sat at the Joint Select Committee meetings with the Ministry of Works in the past, and I asked those questions, that is the first hurdle that they say that they have to get away from, in that any detention and retention pond that has to be built west of the communities that are being affected, it falls, into the Niagara Swamp, into some forested areas that is protected under the Ramsar Convention. So that is a legislative matter that we have to deal with, but the government has to bring it, and I'm sure they will get the support from opposition MPs because that is how we start fixing the problem in my constituency.
Okay, let's hope that happens sometime soon. So, Ms. Ameen, let's get back to those two situations I talked about
Yes.
with respect to the pump and the wall that was built that may have caused more
Yes.
flooding in those communities.
Let me tell you, here is where we have to get political. I have observed that the government has been, whenever to account for their incompetence, they start by blaming the UNC, blaming the leader of opposition, and blaming the people. So a couple years ago, the narrative was people too nasty, they throw in rubbish in the river water courses, and the rubbish is what causing the flooding. And while I do agree that we have to be better at preventing littering, we cannot blame citizens while the government is incompetent. What I'm observing now is a constant attempt by the government and the minister to blame the citizens. So a couple years ago, there is a pump in Bamboo number 1. It is in St. Joseph constituency, just on the boundary of St. Augustine, where a homeless man, from my understanding, a homeless man was lighting a fire in the pump house, and it got out of control and it caused some damage. This was not done by residents. This was not sabotage. I mean, the residents will not sabotage themselves to damage the pump that prevents flooding in their own area. So this was an unfortunate case of a homeless man, a piper, who lit a fire and it got out of control. When residents became aware of it, they did what they could to reduce the effects. And so the ministry was required to replace or repair what was damaged there. That is an area where in Bamboo 1 that is also prone to flooding, and you have that lower Arangwes area and so on that is connected. In the St. Augustine area, the Bamboo area in particular, the minister has constantly been talking about structures on the riverbank. Now, let me tell you, the Ministry of Works has full jurisdiction over the riverbanks. They can intervene at any time to prevent a structure from being constructed, to remove a structure that is constructed, and to remove any obstruction to access the river bank. So if they do their jobs and maintain and monitor the water courses, they will prevent any structure from being built. It is my understanding that while work was going on the St. Joseph River, the river bank was raised, and there is a house that is very close to the riverbank where they have a concrete fence. And because of the height of the riverbank now, it is the same height as their fence. So they felt that it wasn't safe, that bandits could walk on the fence and just jump down into their yard. So they went about trying to build up their fence wall higher than the riverbank, which makes sense to them in terms of securing their family. Now, I think it was ill-advised that they started the construction of the wall on the outside of their existing fence rather than on the inside of their property. They were approached by several residents who advised them, you should not build it on the outside because it looked like you're interfering with the riverbank. But the ministry has jurisdiction, so the ministry could come in and serve a notice. They do have that legal authority. They can serve a notice. If they do not comply with the notice, they can demolish the structure. But certainly to start with intervening and having conversation. We have had numerous farmers, for instance, who want to put up a little shed to give themselves shade during the day. We have people who put a pump on the riverbank to get water during the dry season to their crops. And all of these things have to be regulated. So while even within the community, there are those who will look out and say, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. The ministry has full power. So to me, it is an admission of incompetence and an impotence for the minister to come and tell the country it is the residents' fault that the bank is not the way it should be. The truth is that person who is trying to put a fence to secure their own property is one person, and that is one place on the riverbank. But that entire length of the St. Joseph River and the WZYE River bank that the government promised to do work is far from complete, and the rains have started already. So I think it is really in poor taste for the minister to try to blame a resident, blame a citizen, rather than take responsibility and do what is required, do what they have the power to do in law, and the citizens will fall in line. But so far, from our visiting the St. Joseph River and the Waima River in that bamboo area, the fence is the least of the problem. We have several areas where you can see the bank eroded, where no work has been done, where they just remove the grass and they have not built up the riverbank. And this is erosion that took place over years naturally by the flow of the water. So it's nobody's fault. It is nobody's fault. And I think the Minister of Works has to stop playing politics or trying to play politics. With the flood, there are natural circumstances. We do have climate change. We do have all different types of circumstances. And we have to adjust. And the ministry still has a legal responsibility to deal with the water courses.
Ms. Ameen, wouldn't any breach at all bring water into the vicinity?
Would any
breach of that riverbank bring?
Yes, the St. Joseph River brings a huge volume of water. But like Rushton Paray explained with Mafikin, it is similar in Bamboo, where the St. Joseph River passes through, is the boundary of Bamboo Settlement number 3 and Bamboo Settlement number 2. And when you see the volume of water that comes on, it comes through the Valsain North area as well. The river banks in those areas close to the highway have been built up very high, more than 20 feet. And water does not overflow in those areas. There are areas, however, where the natural erosion from the water coming on over the years have caused the river bank to be narrowed. And if the system works well, even though Bamboo is a low-lying area, once the water is taken out the St. Joseph River and goes out to the Caroni River, we will be fine. If the Waima River flows properly and goes out, Valsain South will be fine. But there are tributaries in the Valsain South area that water flows back in because Valsain South is so low. And what we have in Bamboo and we do not have in Valsain South is a floodgate that prevents the water from coming in when the river is high. The floodgate is closed, but you have a pump. So there is a retention area, and the water from the village, the rainwater and the runoff from the roof and so on, will go to this area where it will be taken over the bank of the St. Joseph River via a pump. We don't have that in Valsain South. There is a tributary, we have identified it, it's in the Real Spring area, and the water flows back so quickly when the water levels rise. And if we have a floodgate there, as we have been asking for years, even before I became MP, the residents have been making representation to the minister. And the request is for a floodgate to be there, and again for a pump to take the water over the riverbank. And that has kept Bamboo number 3 relatively safe from flooding compared to the volume of flood it would have gotten years ago. But when the water, those floodgates are placed and they're surrounded by earth, by dirt, part of the riverbank. And sometimes the erosion causes water to come through. Even when the gate is closed, it comes through the side. And that water could build up pretty quickly. We also have some areas where, because of erosion, the riverbank level has been lowered. So from the time the water reaches a certain height, it will start flowing into the village. What I have seen is real heroism from the residents. In Bamboo 2 in particular, there's a gentleman called Lal. Lal will be outside day and night and with a couple other persons, toting sandbags, filling literally hundreds of sandbags, and to build up the riverbank, when quite frankly, that is the job of the Ministry of Works, the Drainage Department, to bring in earth and bring in equipment to raise that riverbank. I have seen them when the floodgate was jammed. There was a man who risked his life and went down there to remove the obstacle that was jamming to allow the water to flow out the village. In all this time, you're talking about over 2 or 3 days when no water is flowing out, and we are waiting on the Ministry of Works to respond. So the residents have been helpful. If you want to talk about the conduct of the citizens in that area have been helping themselves. If they were to wait on the government to get the pump running, I mean, during the last flooding, the pump ran out of diesel and they could not get diesel to the pump, and it took volunteers with their boats, the men who has been in the swamp, to carry diesel down there, and a man had to walk in with water to his neck to help them fuel the pump. There are no systems in the Ministry of Works to fuel the pumps when the water gets high. There is no system to ensure that the pumps are manned every single day. It is not. And it amazes me that after all these years, you still cannot work out a system to ensure that a responsible person who lives close by, who is accessible, has a key and is trained to operate the pump, to refuel the pump, and to do minor repairs to the pump. It amazes me. And I think it's because they just do not have that political will. So every time something happens, you find the minister just playing games, and he'll tell you, oh, somebody is building a wall. He will not tell you about the people who lift hundreds of sandbags to build up the riverbank. That is the ministry's work. They will not tell you about people who risk their lives to go and get the floodgate working. You know, I mean, when you talk about citizens, you have to be fair and balanced. But the ministry has a legal right, a legal responsibility. And to me, they just have to do their job. And they have not been doing that.
So let's move over to a very, very, very interesting topic right now in Trinidad and Tobago, the local government election. And I don't think I'm not sure if it was today or yesterday we saw that with respect to this local government election. Now, there are 14 municipal corporations in Trinidad and Tobago, right? Or it's just Trinidad?
Just Trinidad. Tobago has the THE.
Right. So we have 14 municipal corporations in Trinidad, and we have several councillors in each municipal corporation, right?
Yes.
Is the highest one San Juan Laventilla has 21 councillors? Or
that is 21 councillors and aldermen. They also have 4 aldermen, so they don't have 21 councillors.
All right. So just trying to get the match right here. All right. So we also learned that the political leader of the UNC, Mrs. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, said that, you know, I'm paraphrasing here, right? That, you know, she don't have a problem combining with smaller parties, you know, and they have to come. And I saw somebody may have added on something to say, once they are not disrespectful, you know. So here's the question. Does that mean to say that the UNC is not going to contest all 14 corporations and other smaller parties may contest, you know, other corporations? Like, for example, if we say the Port of Spain, what is the Port of Spain South? Whichever corporation is in Port of Spain.
Yes.
Will the PDP, the NTA, and the UNC come together, and they will allow, for example, the PDP to contest that corporation in Port of Spain as an example?
Yes. Well, the thing is, partnerships can take different forms. So in the People's Partnership government led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar, you had 5 political parties, and I mean, Mrs. Persad-Bissessar did well to manage all those egos and personalities for the entire 5-year term. The thing is, with whereas previously the UNC would have teamed up in that partnership and shared seats. For instance, when I was the chairman of Tunapuna Piako Corporation, some seats within the region were contested by the UNC on a UNC ticket, and some were contested by the COP on a COP ticket. And when we were combined, we had 5 UNC and 4 COP councillors winning. And so together we had the majority, which was 9. Because we now have proportional representation at the local government level means all the votes combined within that region, based on the proportion you receive, you are allowed, if you have 25%, 1 alderman. If you have close to 50%, you have 2 aldermen. And so all the votes go into one political party is what will determine that. So it will be interesting, because the details of any sort of partnership and any sort of togetherness has not been worked out. In fact, as the leader of the UNC, the Honorable Kamala Persad-Bissessar has been calling on a number of these players to come home. Many of them were in the UNC, were in the partnership. We do have people who were formerly in the COP, senior members of the COP, who are working with the UNC on the ground as UNC, because they understand how important it is to unite under one tent. Wherever we want the votes for proportional representation to count within our region, we have to decide, of course, what ticket you are going to contest on. But certainly we have not reached to that distance. And what I have seen, because I have been working on the ground, I have seen a number of people from other political parties who have been working with us on the ground. Mr. Obika, former ambassador, who was at NJAC with NJAC. He is the UNC's coordinator for the Point Fortin constituency. Flora Singh, who was a UNC, I believe she was the deputy mayor, but she certainly was a very active member of the COP and a COP councillor in Arima Borough, has been the UNC's candidate in the 2020 election, and she has been the coordinator for the Arima Borough and the Arima constituency for more than a year. We have several other persons, people like Lincoln Douglas and others. In fact, I'll give you, I share with you a story. When I was going up for councillor, my opponent in the COP was a fellow called Amit Mahabir. And I met him, I shook his hand, and I wished him all the best because I felt he was a good person. And over the years, we encountered each other because we would always be doing things for the community. When I contested the election in 2020, he was my campaign manager. And he has remained steadfastly UNC. So there are a lot of people who have held senior positions in the COP, including Anil Roberts and others, who are working under the UNC umbrella. And so as we go forward, of course, there are other persons who may not have ever been in the UNC who are welcome to join the efforts, but any details will have to be worked out, I'm sure, amongst the political leaders. And I'm not a political leader of any of the small parties, so I will not presume to speak on their behalf. But what we require this time is unity. There are regional corporations where we do not win half of the seats, but we win 2 out of the 4 aldermen. Tunapuna Piako is one such constituency, and it speaks of an imbalance and a poor reflection when you count the seats as to the number of votes and the actual support the UNC has. When you look at the number of votes required to win a seat in Couva Regional Corporation or Princestown, which might be close to an electorate of 10,000, and then you see in Point Fortin and Arima, they only need 3,000 maximum. When I say the electorate is 3,000 and they get a couple hundred and they win, when we have to work for 10 times that number of votes to win a seat in Couva or Princestown. So the vote does not reflect the support in local government. And I think there is an equity that has to be addressed in terms of the size of the electorate. And certainly when we consider proportional representation and the number of aldermen we will get and the number of seats we will get, it will be advantageous to contest all the seats in a region under one political party.
So, MP Paray, what says you?
In Mayaro here, we do have the existing regional corporation with 6 seats. 5 of which we have, the PNM has 1. And based on the number of votes, as Khadijah explained with the proportional representation, we ended up with 3 aldermen and the PNM ended up with 1. So there's a council of 10. What you have now with the changes at the EBC, they have taken the 1 PNM electoral district and they've split it into 2. So basically what you found is that we will get away from a tie in the future. We have had an incident where we had 3-3 in the past and you had to pull straws and so on. With 7 seats now, there will be no tie. There will be an outright winner. But in terms of, the regional corporation, we are very, very strong. The United National Congress remains a very strong political entity in the Mayaro constituency. I do not expect any movement in terms of the votes at this local government election. We remain very strong in the 5 electoral districts. the 1 PNM electoral data split. I think if we get two very good candidates, of which I understand we screened about 10 very, very good people, I suspect two of the better ones will emerge as the candidates, and they will have the backing of our election machinery, of the MP for the area, which is myself, and we will go forward on those two seats and give the PNM a good run for their money. I think we can take one out of the two, so I'm looking for at least a 6-1 at the end of the day. We're going strong. We have a very good election day machinery in Mayaro. It has worked tremendously for me in 2 general election campaigns, and our local election machinery works as well. So I think, with the right data, with the right time, we've given a pretty long election day period, which, it can take a toll on you, but I think with the right management system, we will wait for guidance from the political, from the national executive in terms of how we are going to approach the campaign. We do have the submission dates. I think it's June 25th to 26th. I think we'd have to register the candidates. So we do have some time. Screening is in progress. I know MP Khadijah, she is very active on the screening committee, and I have every assurance that we will get the best candidates out so that we can work with them with sufficient time to get them to election day. But we remain confident in Mayaro that we're going to hold our corporation here with ease, because we've been doing a fantastic job over the last 10, 15 years as a UNC-run corporation. We're very strong, so I have no fear going forward.
So MP Paray, I wanted to ask you a question, just a quick follow-up question. Sure. So do we expect shortly who are the other parties that the UNC is going to be combining with respect to the local government elections?
Well, I can't respond to that because that is a bit above my participation level in the party. At that level, you find the NATEX and the political leader is dealing with that. She made an announcement quite strongly last night. So we're in early stages, as Khadijah mentioned. We are very early in the game. I do not know if we may have participation of smaller parties at the corporation here who may not be aligned with the UNC. I am sure of the UNC and the PNM going head-to-head. I have not heard on the grapevine on the ground of any of the other political parties even considering contesting in the Mayaro region. Whether there is some amalgamation going forward, that will be left to seen, and that will be up to the political leader and the NATEX to make that decision.
So
yeah, I too have not seen any of those minor political parties active in the St. Augustine constituency. We have 3 seats that are strong UNC for the local within St. Augustine, and 1 that is that the PNM usually wins. I have not seen any sort of activity from any of those smaller parties within St. Augustine, and certainly we don't consider any of those to be a threat. But of course, as I said before, we have had a number of persons who were formerly affiliated with other political parties who have recognized the need to work and the need for unity. And they have come forward and they have been working in the UNC, in the trenches with us, shoulder to shoulder, and they have been doing very well, doing a tremendous job, and I must commend them.
So we have to say that it's open. So, for example, the UNC is open. I know none of you guys are not.
And Slam, the political leader made a statement on the platform, as Rushton Paray just indicated to you. Rushton and myself are not the political leaders of any of these small parties to give any definitive statement. No accord has been signed, as you had the Pfizer accord for the People's Partnership, and the formal arrangements with those smaller political parties will take place eventually. But I am telling you, from a practical level, I have not seen activities on the ground in the constituency I represent, but I also know that there are a number of people who were formerly associated with other political parties who have been working with us. And that is also a part of unity. And I have really enjoyed the camaraderie that I share with some of those persons. I called some names earlier, but certainly the formalizing of those arrangements take time. Those are things that would be a work in progress. So don't try to pin myself or Paray down to something that is not yet final, okay? But certainly the bottom line, the
Khadijah, the
principle is
last
that
thing I could do,
go
Khadijah, is
forward
pin
in
you to
unity.
anything. I can't pin you to anything, Khadijah.
Yeah, the principle, you can pin me to this. The principle is that we go forward with unity. You know, we have a united approach, whatever form it takes, whether we go under one political umbrella, whether we go on one ticket or several. The point is that we will have a united approach. Yeah?
Okay. Now, here is a big issue facing, I believe, facing local government election, right? It is the 3% annual rental revenue property tax, right? And I live in the United States of America, and our tax are based on the assessed value of the property as opposed to the annual rental value, the ARV, right? And in the United States of America, the average property tax is about 1.1%, right? If you look at the average property tax in New York City, it's about 1%. And I know they say that it's, for example, if you have a property and the annual rental value is the rental value is 1,500, you multiply that times 12. I know there's a 10% deduction that they put in, the 90%, and then they reduce it by 10%, and then you get the taxes being paid. But here is my question, right? I am asking if a property tax of 3% across the board for people that live in Westmoreland, which is a more wealthy area, and people that live in communities like Pinal de Bay, Lavantil, Mova, and San Juan, paying a 3% across the board. Even though we know that in the wealthier areas, you're going to collect more taxes, and in the areas like Pinal de Bay, etc., you'll collect less taxes. Why should a person in Pinal de Bay, for example, pay the same 3% as a person in Westmoreland? You want to go first, Rushton?
Well, I will tell you, Rushton Paray has an area that is has a lot of rural communities. They also have a lot of agricultural communities. Certainly, there are no, in terms of development-wise, there are no major development that is upper class or middle class in any major way in that area. And for instance, Mayaro Regional Corporation will be affected by that kind of inequality that you mentioned. The Sangre Grande region as well. The Sangre Grande was deemed to be one of the poorest regions in terms of income per capita. Many of the houses there are wooden houses. Some of them are very old. Many of them, the roads and so on to those areas are in really terrible shape. And you will have that inequality continuing because the rental value of those properties will be lower. Therefore, the taxes to the regional corporation will be lower compared to areas where you have better quality houses, higher valued houses. They will pay higher taxes and therefore they will be able to get better service. Because the system is so unfair, the regional corporations, the government has advised that the regional corporations will collect the residential taxes. And the lion's share of property tax, which is the commercial and industrial would go to the central government. So in an area such as Couva, where you have the Point Lisas industrial estate, that brings in billions of dollars in revenue, you have properties with millions of dollars there. The taxes from that will not go to helping the citizens in that surrounding area. You see, so an MP like Rushton Paray would have an interest in representing his constituents to ensure that the equity where this taxation is concerned, that equity happens.
So Rushton, you want to?
Yeah, we have the same problem because we do have an industrial complex here, the Galeota Point Industrial Complex, which where the property values would be very, very high. As Khadijah mentioned, under the new law, under the amended law, only the residential taxes, as she mentioned, is going to come to the coffers of the regional corporation. Commercial industrial, and agricultural taxes are going to go to central government. Now, I did a quick calculation, right? And if you bear with me for just a couple of minutes, I'm going to shoot out some numbers here for you to show that one of the anchors that the government is bantering about is that having the regional corporation collect their own taxes going to make life better for the citizens or the burgesses, right? And I want to just give you some numbers here very quickly. The Mayaro constituency has, and I'm using the electorate, 35,000 persons, which was a 2011 census study. Now, if we assume, for the ease of the mathematics, that it's 17,000 couples, man and woman, and they each own a home, we have 17,000 homes in the Mayaro constituency. Let's assume 10% of that 17,000 homes are what you call executive premium homes that will pay $5,000 a year in taxes. That means 1,700 homes paying $5,000 a year will give us $8.5 million. Now, the balance of homes, which is 15,300 homes, will pay a marginal. And when you look at the type of homes, Khadijah talked about rural communities, we don't expect any of the homes to be valued at more than $1,500 AVR per month, which gives you $540 as the annual tax. So if you multiply 15,300 homes by $540, it gives you $8.2 million. So this is where it gets interesting. Executive homes, 8.5, non-executive homes, 8.2. So if in a world of utopia where all things remain equal and everybody happy to pay their taxes, the regional corporation is going to get $16.7 million in taxes. But you know what? Right now, the developmental budget alone for Mayaro is between $16 and $20 million a year to give basic services in terms of their developmental budget. So we're going to be collecting less money. And then it costs the regional corporation $100 million to operate a year. We are the second largest in geographic size. You know, we have 28 communities, 19 primary schools, 5 secondary schools. We have a complex economy, fishing, hotel, restaurant, industrial, agriculture. The regional corporation struggles with what they have. Now, you talk about local government reform, and you are bringing a more complex arrangement to the administration, higher quality of employees, more professional people. Throw another $20 million on top of that per year. Where is this money going to come from? So if anybody is buying the fallacy, this story, this fable of the government, that the money collected is going to improve anything, well, we will have a lot to be expecting, because I assure you, without the commercial taxes, without the industrial taxes, without the agricultural taxes, there will be no change. As a matter of fact, I think the regional corporation will continue to have to go cap in hand to the Minister of Finance just to balance off our own budget. So that's a real fallacy. I don't think that is going to happen. The system is not going to work. I don't expect 100% of the people in the constituency to be able or in a position to pay some of these taxes as well. Because when you lump what is coming down, you're talking about increased power rates, increased water rates, property tax. We have fuel going up 5 times in 4 years. What may seem $350 to me might be, one dinner with my family somewhere in the evening. But to a lot of families who live day to day, I was explaining to a man today, when the flood waters come up and some of these families are stuck in their home, for these families to eat, somebody had to go out and make a hustle. They had to go and pull a fish, a seine, go dig up something in a garden for somebody. And when they're stuck in the home for the floodwater, that family can't eat in the evening. And we have a responsibility. So they was asking, well, why we just fly in and give away water and give hamper? We politicize. I said, no, you could say that because you're dry up in your house or you're in front of a keyboard on Facebook. And you have to worry where the meal coming from. And these are the issues that we as MPs and councillors have to face every day. And this property tax, and based on the amendment that we made just a couple of weeks ago, before the year is over, the Board of Inland Revenue will be issuing the taxes to homeowners who have submitted their data under the force of law. Because if you didn't supply the information by a set date, there's a $5,000 fine for non-submission. So I want to see how that is going to happen as well, because there's quite a bit of people who didn't supply the information. They're going to have to pay a $5,000 fine on top of whatever the valuators put on the property going forward. So that is the challenge we're going to find here, especially in Mayaro. And I am sure it's going to be the same problem throughout the country in terms of that inequity as well.
Khadijah, you wanted to add anything?
I think Rushton Paray summed it up really nicely, and he gave you some practical figures that are real when it comes to what it requires to run the regional corporations. I must add, I have been a councillor for 10 years. 3 of those years, I sat as the chairman of the regional corporation. What I observe happens for budgeting, the practice is that whatever revenue a regional corporation raises, right now they have revenue from market fees and other services that they provide, cesspool services and so on. And all the revenue that they collect, they have to get it audited and you have to get approval to use it. But what they usually do is subtract that from your subvention. So whatever monies you are going to be getting from the government, they would usually minus that amount and they give you approval to use it. So that could also happen if that is the practice, because property tax will now become part of your revenue. So that could happen. That is a practical thing that is not in law. So the government could mamagai you anyhow, any way you take it. And I think we need to have a better system where that is concerned. But the UNC's position is that now is not the time for property tax. We have a lot of people emerging from the COVID pandemic whose income has been decimated. We have a lot of government workers, people with permanent jobs who have been living below the breadline, who are cannot sustain themselves because it has been 10 years since their last pay increase. You have some of them getting a 4% increase in salary while inflation has gone up 17%. I recently went to the Etihad Savannah, which is on the Eastern Main Road and part in St. Augustine constituency, but close to the Eastern Main Road in Tunapuna. And I met several homeless people there. It was very early in the morning, and one of the gentlemen explained to me that he is a permanent daily paid employee of WASA, and he has had to be evicted from his home because he could no longer pay his rent. So he sleeps in the savannah, but he has a job, and he goes to work and he makes enough money to buy food and to get the passage to go to work and so on. And one of the reasons he is unable to pay rent is because he is paying a loan for his daughter who had to go abroad to study because she was not getting the gate to cover her studies here. So you see the tremendous sacrifice. These are not worthless people. These are people who have permanent government jobs and they cannot put a roof over their head. So that is what we are emerging from in this COVID pandemic. That's what we are dealing with, where people have not gotten reasonable increases in their salary to meet the increased cost of living. And so our position in the UNC is now is not the time for property tax.
Ms. Ameen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Are we to believe that the property tax is a done deal and it cannot be reversed?
It has been passed in law. Rushton, you want to explain?
Yeah, it is law. The property tax is law. The only thing that was missing, the law had required the Commissioner of Valuations to have assessed at least 50% of the homes in the country before he can switch that lever to give the Board of Inland Revenue the authority to go ahead and issue the taxing invoice.
And has the 50% threshold been met?
Yeah. Well, the government came about a month ago and they interfered with the law. And I'll tell you what they did. The law prior to 1 month ago stated that the Commissioner of Valuation had to have access to 50% of all the properties in the country: residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural. They came with an amendment, passed it by simple majority, and it gave the power to the commissioner of valuation that as long as he had 50% of any classification, so all he had to do was get 50% of the residential homes, and now he has the power to turn that lever for the property tax. So they interfered with the law, the original law, and they made an amendment. So now the commissioner of valuation has the power, and it gets even more reckless. Let me tell you how it gets more reckless. The first clause that they amended, they put in a phrase, an estimate of, which means the definition of an annual rental value. So what it means now is that if the valuation officer says that my house has an AVR of $10,000 a month, I could take him to court through the tribunal and say, I disagree with that, let me go to court. Because that is not the value. Right. So they come and they change the law, that they change it from the value to an estimate. So it now means in law, the valuator is allowed to give an estimate. But you know what that estimate can be done? He don't have to come Mayaro to watch my house. Somebody submit a picture. He sit down in the office in Port of Spain and he watch a picture of my house. He see the houses are wrong. He see the condition of the road, the drain. And he can make an estimate, and that is fine in law. But what it also does, this ban of valuators, they give these children a 6-week course in UE. So now you have untrained valuators watching a picture, sitting down in Port of Spain, and by law, they are allowed to give an estimate value on your house. And if you like it, that's your business. That is the ruthlessness, the callousness of this government to come to the parliament, use its majority in the parliament to pass reckless pieces of amendments to the law that puts more pressure on the citizen. And that is what we're dealing with here in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is unfair. It is unreasonable. And I mean, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, in the United States, people pay their taxes. But the United States, people get service. I don't think anybody, any one of you in the United States will accept 1 day of water in 21 days. I think you go to war with your city council for that.
No.
Gets water sometime in some communities 1 day in 21 days. To show how low we have set the bar in this country. In 2023, we are accepting, boy Paray, boy MP, if we get water once in 2 weeks, boy, we go happy. That cannot be what we're aiming for in 2023 in a very modern society like ours. And when you look at the fact that property tax doesn't assure me better water, it doesn't assure me a better supply of power, it doesn't give me the guarantee that my schools, the toilet systems in the schools will be repaired. You know, you have children going into primary schools where there's no flushing on the toilets.
Oh, God.
Taking a complaint at a PTA meeting that my daughters, they don't go to the toilet, they hold up, you know, they need to go to pass water for the entire day. And when they reach home, they're in all kind of pain. You know, when I raised that at the PTA, you know what the principal tell me? Some children expect they look for a very high standard out of the home. How come on the cleanliness of a toilet? You don't need no high standard for that. That's a human right for a child. And these are the challenges that is being peddled by the state. That is property tax and the collection of these taxes and you know, the regional corporation will be able to hire contractors to go fix it. It is not going to happen because we're not going to collect the revenue to make those things happen. And they're selling pipe dreams at the end of the day. And that is where my concern is. I mean, I see models all over the world. I was researching the model for property tax in Hyderabad. What they did, they used the electricity rate on the house to determine the affluency of the home. So you have a house, a 1-bedroom house might use $100 in power. Your tax will be based on that. My house at a 5-bedroom, 5-air conditioned swimming pool, garage, left wing, white ring, I paying $4,000 a month power, then I'm taxed on that. So there's some equity in terms of how you are taxed based on how you burn current. Because the more affluent you are, the more services that you are getting that needs power. And they did something like that. So that too was a challenge that we objected to in terms of the formula they were using. So it's really a crazy piece of legislation. That's why we axed it in 2009, but unfortunately we didn't get the time to rip it off the books. And government changed in 2015, and they proceeded with it in its form. They made some amendments.
So you're saying that there's no way that it can be pushed back?
Yes, there is a way. It can be pushed back if the government changes, as did happen in 2010 when you had the entire Axi tax campaign. And when the UNC went into government, it scrapped the legislation completely. So that can happen. And I think it is for people in Trinidad and Tobago to decide what they want. Do you want a government who will play Russian roulette with your future? One of the things that happened is that the people were resisting. People were also scared. There are people who were not filling the assessment forms, and the government went to court. In fact, there was an injunction that where the ministry hired persons who would pass and look over your fence, peep over your fence, and put their own assessment of what your property was worth on their forms.
MP, is that true? Is that true?
It went up, yeah, there was a legal challenge, there was an injunction, and the government's response was to go to the parliament and use their simple majority to change the requirement for the owner of the property to participate in the assessment. So you can either do the assessment yourself, or they have trained, I think it's about 150 persons to pass around, and they will call you if you do not respond. They can look over your fence and determine what they believe the annual rental value of your house will be. And that, to me, that is a form of bullying. That's you're really using a big stick at your residence, at your property owner. So a lot of people are also scared that they could lose their property in this regime, in this method. So we have challenged their method. We have challenged them using their simple majority to go into the parliament to just have their way over people's property. And we also are saying, from a human standpoint, given that we are emerging from the COVID pandemic, we are seeing natural disasters in the country and people are fighting to recover and so on. Now is not the time for property tax. But I think what is happening is that, in Trinidad, I think what we are seeing here is a Piper government. Have you ever, sometimes you see homes where the family go abroad and they leave a relative in the house, but that relative is a drug addict. So they sell everything in the house. So they will literally rip out the kitchen sink. So they will start with the gas tank, which is portable. They will sell the wheelbarrow in the yard, the garden hose, and then they will start to dismantle the house. They will literally take out the kitchen sink. They will sell the stove and so on. And to me, that is what the government is doing. The government has been scrapping and selling the revenue earners of the country, and so now they are forcing the citizens to stand in a bucket and to pull themselves up in that bucket. And so that you have the property tax, you have the proposals for other taxes, because they have not been able to manage the revenue earning assets of the country in a meaningful way to take care of the cost of running the country. And so what they are resorting to now is really as a result of that Piper management.
Question. What happens if you don't comply or pay the tax? Do they have something in place to deal with that or to treat with that?
Yeah. If Khadijah will allow me to answer that. If you fail to pay the property tax, it will stand against your record. And the state has the power to levy on your fixtures and furnishings in your home. So if I sign up paying the tax and after 2 or 3 years the tax accumulated, the Board of Inland Revenue, by law, which is the legislation, can get a bailiff and come and seize stove, fridge, bed, wardrobe to the effect of the value of what you owe. Now, even beyond that, let's assume that I'm a pensioner or I have some physical challenge, I'm getting social welfare, but I'm the owner of the property and I can't pay the property tax. I can apply to the state to waive the taxes. But hear this. When I pass on any of my heirs, my executor, in order for them to get the property, they must pay all the taxes. The property tax that have been accumulated over the years, you have to pay all of that, plus whatever taxes that you would normally do in terms of your inheritance and so on. So you can't escape debt and taxes, as the man used to say. So you can't get away from it. They will seize your pot and pan according to the law to pay the taxes.
So when we put the UNC in power in 2025, we don't have to worry about that anymore. Right?
Oh.
We will revise all those pieces of legislation. Let me tell you something. The issue about governance is about caring for the public. A minister of finance could run the government like an economics textbook. You can go to economics school and you balance your assets and liabilities. But politics is about taking care of people. That's the first and foremost in terms of national security, welfare. I'm not saying that we must make a lazy, uninnovative population. But coming out of COVID, coming out of so much challenges with regards to our infrastructure and so on, we have to be a little more caring. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, historically from 2010 to 2015, you must give her credit. All of her policies, every single one, had a component of care. I'll give you a perfect example. The URP had a program where they would have paid a single mother with a child who had some sort of ADHD, autism, and so on. You can't go to work and bring a nanny to look after that child. So there was a program in the URP where those mothers could have been employed with the URP, but you know what? We will pay you the $80 stipend, but stay home and look after the child. Yes. So you still have that money to go buy Pampers, buy a little medication. But you know what happened as soon as government changed? The first thing Minister Hines did, as the Minister of Works and Infrastructure, he says that full of corruption, he disbanded the whole thing. Now, I'm not saying over time, elements get into these programs and these services get to people who don't deserve it. I will not argue with that. But rather than disband the whole thing, man, go in and find the fellas who are abusing and get rid of them. So when you look at these programs, things like the baby grant and so on, do you know that under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, eradicating poverty is one of the SDGs? And do you know issues of baby grants and so on were part of it? So we, in 2010 to 2015, we were way ahead of a lot of our Latin American and Caribbean partners in dealing with these issues of bringing these SDGs to the forefront in terms of our economic policy. All of the policies of the United National Congress, the People's Partnership, were aligned to those SDGs. Government change in 2015. What they did, they took their political manifesto, color it up, and you turned it into government policy. And that is where you go wrong.
I want to say from 2010 to 2015, I expected some changes that we didn't see. And I'm sure if those changes were in place today, we'd be in a better place than we are in Trinidad today. I'm talking about especially with that playbook that we work with in the country at this particular time.
Absolutely. We had a program in place to deal with 5 or 6 major areas in terms of foreign direct investment, in terms of so for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. In 2013, there were a partial scope arrangement made with Panama. And more or less, Kevin Ramnarayan at that time was the then Minister of Energy. And I think Minister Vassan Bharat, who was in trade, or Stephen Cadiz, one of them. They had a partial scope agreement with Panama. And the Galeota Point port, the phase 2 development would have been designed for what you call deep hull vessels that carry between 11 and 15 meter hulls. Every single Panamax class vessel leaving for Europe, coming through the Panama Canal, the arrangement was to stop in Trinidad, refuel, because we have the best and the cheapest fuel in terms of marine fuel for those vessels. We'd have been able to build an entire industry around the model of Aberdeen in terms of navigation service, general services to vessels before they take their journey across the Atlantic. As soon as government changed, I can tell you, I was in Panama in 2016. I was greeted by the embassy officials. I had dinner with one of the ladies who was there, and I was asking her, what are we doing in Panama? What's happening? She says, unfortunately, at that time, all those agreements were yellow, and they pack it up on a shelf, and we never pursue it. Up to today, Galeota Point cannot take deep hull vessels to help in the Guyana oil industry, where we could be earning U.S. currency. We can't put a deep hull vessel in Galeota Point right now.
Mr. Paray, what do you think? This is Miss Benskin. What do you think it will take? I have this question for you too. What do you think it will take in Trinidad and Tobago for the administrations, whomever they are incumbent, to just set aside this, this ideology that is not we idea, so we are pushing it, when it is for the betterment of the population?
Yes.
Because here in America, Democrat or Republican, something going on that we benefit. You understand what I'm saying? So, especially if it's critical. It pains me, Miss Ameen, to hear a citizen gainfully employed and got to sleep in a savannah. I mean, what's the Ministry of Social Development doing? You understand me? So what do we have to do? What do citizens? Yes.
So Khadijah, 1 minute. Khadijah, 1 minute. I think what we're gonna do, that question is gonna take a little bit. I don't think you can answer that question like in a minute or so. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go for a quick early break, and when we come back, Khadijah, you and MP Rushton Paray are gonna get to that question. All right. So go, guys. Let's go for a quick station identification. And the guys in the chat, I see your questions. As soon as we finish answer these this question here from MP Khadijah Ameen and MP Rushton Paray, we're gonna get to your questions because they've been with us quite a while now. So guys, stick and stay. Send the village. Let's go for a quick station identification. We'll be right back after this show.
You're listening to WZYE 95.9 FM. You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in the tri-state area. Broadcasting from East Orange, New Jersey, the most influential name in Caribbean radio, WZYE 95.9 FM.
Back with you. It's in the village with the DAT triplets on WZYE 95.9 FM. Of course, we come to every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. That's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 7 to 10 p.m. If you just joined us, we have with us tonight, MP Khadijah Ameen from St. Augustine and MP Rushton Paray from Mayaro. So let's get back to the question, Ms. Ameen.
Yes, Diana, you asked about why a government cannot embrace something good that was being done by a past government and continue it for the sake of its citizens. I use one practical example that I was personally involved in, which was when we were in opposition. I was a councillor from 2003 when Patrick Manning kept postponing the local government elections. And when Kamla Persad-Bissessar became Prime Minister in 2010, she called the local government elections and I ran and I won back my seat. So during my time in opposition, there was a group called Kyrie Consultants and others who were doing regional development plans for each region. And it took quite a lot of work in terms of urban development and planning and so on to put together these regional plans. When government changed, the proposal went to cabinet and the cabinet of Kamla Persad-Bissessar agreed to adopt those regional development plans and continue on them. And of course, it was expected that it would be improved or changed as time go along. That is one example. And I think that we have had a number of fantastic initiatives by the People's Partnership government that whether you like Kamla or not, they should be continued in the interest of the nation and for the interest of the development of the country. So for instance, there are several schools all over the country that were in some cases 80 and 90% complete. I have one in Cura Presbyterian School, and they were stopped, the construction stopped, and they were overgrown with bushes, overrun with rats and rodents, and then the students were still cramped in the old.
You are listening to
that should have continued. The construction should have continued. You have the UE South Campus in Davie. So just because it's Davie, just because it's Penal, you think that's Kamla and you just stop it. The fact is that the campus in Penal and Davie does not only benefit the people of Debe. You have people from Rio Claro who it's easier to go for them to go south than to come up to St. Augustine campus for UE. There are students from Point Fortin and Cedros and so on. It's easier to access the campus in south, the south campus. And you're talking about development for the entire country. And I have seen some of these infrastructural projects just stop, and you are seeing the waste before your eyes, because instead of those facilities being put to use, they are overgrown. And in order to get them back into a usable state, you have to spend so much more money. Some of these facilities have been vandalized, but some of them, just the neglect have caused them to be so run down that you have to now go and spend a lot of money to get it back up. And so I think part of it is that the government does not have an appreciation for that south of the Caroni River is Trinidad and Tobago too. I think when they see development such as the Couva Children's Hospital and so on, they feel that Couva is no man's land. Nobody lives there. When they hear about something in Cedros or Point Fortin or Guayari, they feel that nobody lives there. So they do not support it. It was only when the People's Partnership case was in government, you had like the Mayaro Fire Station. There's a nice police station on the way going down there as well. You had so many things in these far-flung areas. I remember a beach facility in Losi Road somebody told me about, and I said, had to be Kamala build that there, because no PNM government builds these things in these far-flung areas because they feel that nobody lives there. And we have to move away from the Port of Spain centric, and we have spoken so much, and the PNM has spoken so much about decentralization. They have been talking about local government reform since before Keith Rowley was a prime minister. The PNM has been singing the local government reform song for decades, but you don't see them making it into action. When they talk about decentralization, that is what Kamla Persad-Bissessar did, because you had a Ministry of Agriculture headquarters, not moved from Port-of-Spain to Shoguanas, which is central and easier to access for the entire country. You had the San Fernando Teaching Hospital. You had the Point Fortin and Arima hospitals, but you had schools all over. But you also had ministries, government ministries, in especially some of the rural town centers. So Rio Claro, for instance, is considered a rural town center, as is Mayaro, as is Sandy Grande, and many of those areas. You then had government offices that were there being outfitted to perform all the services that you would usually need to go to Port-of-Spain for. You had the Caroni licensing office that houses many departments of the Ministry of Works, including traffic management and so on. So that sort of approach to local government, decentralization, is not just the business of the regional corporation, it is the business of every ministry, and that has to be approached. So another government coming in, as the PNM came in, and they did not have an appreciation of the rest of the country. It means that their principles when it comes to development is very different. It's very centralized, and that is how they govern. They govern by centralizing the power. Only a few friends and family and financiers have access to the resources of the country, have access to make decisions, have access to what is going on behind the scenes. And it is the same way they operate when they're in government, when they want to develop the country and so on, as opposed to the UNC that is more people-centered. So I think the government shutting down those programs that was started because it was started by the Kamla Persad-Bissessar administration really speaks to an ignorance about what is in the rest of the country. The rest of this country is beautiful. There are places that some people in Port-of-Spain don't even know exist. And how do we encourage people to visit those places if the roads are not in good conditions, if the amenities are not there, if the security is not good, if they can't have a rest stop on the way, if they can't use a washroom facility, if they can't purchase local foods? I mean, people travel to Debe for doubles, and people will travel to other parts of the country. So I think the government has to be more holistic in its approach for development, and that will allow them to embrace development in other parts of the country rather than shutting down the development.
P. Paray?
Yes, so I just want to add one or two items here. And historically, in terms of the Caribbean, we've had that problem with governments and this issue of continuing projects when you transit from one government to the other. Government projects ought to be completed because it's taxpayers' money that are being spent. And I remember we had a Joint Select Committee inquiry in 2017. It was the first time in the history of these Joint Select Committees that we subpoenaed, well, I wouldn't want to use the word subpoenaed, but we requested that the Prime Minister appeared before the tribunal, and Prime Minister Rowley came. And it was a hearing to determine the fast ferries, and there was an issue of a boat called the SS Galicia that was terminated, and there was a whole roll of issues of corruption and so on and allegations. But there was one question I myself asked the Prime Minister. Why did he terminate the contract of this vessel, which was carrying people and goods and transportation to Tobago? For the 3 or 4 years it was in operation, it worked perfect. There was no issues of Tobago Trinidad transportation on the sea bridge. The Prime Minister's response, that as Prime Minister, he could not accept to renew a contract that was riddled in so much of perceived corruption, because up to now, we find no corruption anywhere at the Joint Select Committee level. I think there are matters in court up to now, years after. But there was corruption in his mind. So he said, you know what, I am not renewing this contract. We had a veteran public officer who gave testimony about 2 or 3 hours after. And I asked that veteran public officer, I said, sir, the Prime Minister position that he was not going to renew this contract because of all these allegations of corruption on the vessel. Do you agree that that was a good position adopted by the Prime Minister? You know what was his response? He said, if we accept what the Prime Minister had to say, this very same building that we're in, which is the waterfront complex, was riddled with corruption, we wouldn't have been sitting here. So in his view, the government ought not to use the issues of corruption and so on to stop the completion of projects, because taxpayers' money have been put into it. Finish it. And when the project is done and it's been populated and put to good use, you want to go to court and find who thief and so on, by all means go ahead. But do not stop the projects. And one lesson that we learned from the Chinese, in the early days, hundreds of years ago, when the emperor changed, the first thing the emperor did, he called the old cabinet and he said, fellas, listen, I want you to talk to my boys and let me decide what projects we continue in, because it would have been working well, and what we scrapping. So there was some continuity. That doesn't happen, unfortunately, in our Westminster system. When the election day is called, ministers of government pack the box and they walk out of the office. And whenever the new minister comes in, there is no transition. There's no conversation. There is nothing. Like how in the US system, when you have the election in November, you have the president-elect coming in January somewhere, and there's a transition time when the staff guides the new staff into where things are. There's conversation between the two presidents. That doesn't happen in our system. So there is no fostering of this nationalistic feeling when governments change. And it's like pure hate. We mash up everything the last government do, and we start back from square one, and that puts the country back years by just trying to catch up.
Mr. Paray, Dr. Holy, do you believe it's a mistrust between...
Let me go to the chat.
Okay.
Because I know, we have them here for a while. There's a question that says, I wonder if anyone, I'm just reading it as is in the chat there, folks. I wonder if any one of the two can say if the leadership has made any request to reconcile the differences with the old members who have been critical of the party leadership.
And I have indicated that there are a number of persons who, when the leader issued the call, even more than a year ago, at our National Congress and other places, making the call for people to come back home. There are those who were formerly UNC who had their own opinions, some concerning leadership and other issues, and they remain UNC but remain very publicly critical of the UNC. The leader has often invited them to come and work with the UNC, and some of them have. There are those who have been working, who have been advising the national executive, who have been advising campaign preparation teams in different regions. And there are those who continue to be critical. And I think some of them continue to be critical because they like the attention. Some of them, even when you reach out to them, they have not reciprocated. They have not, been responsive. So there are those, I think, who will continue to make mischief, but there are those who are genuine and who want to see the country progress. And so we have a number of people who have been working with us. I don't think the UNC spends enough time responding to its detractors because we are so focused on getting things right. We are focused on getting our plan for economic recovery, our local government plans for each region, and tying that into a national development plan that would allow development in different regions that would feed into a national economic recovery of the country. And we have been focused on many of those things, but I don't see some of those former this and former that contributing. But I do see quite a number of former ministers, quite a number of persons who did not even support Kamla Persad-Bissessar for leader, who have come aboard and are working with us. And they are working, helping us train people who are part of the election day machinery at different levels and so on, and they are contributing to building the institution of the party. So those who wish to contribute are very welcome. In fact, the political leader has made it very clear that all are welcome to the House of the Rising Sun under one tent. But there will be others who will continue to engage, even though they are not readily agreeable. We will continue to engage them, but the point is that we must have a common objective, and it is about Trinidad and Tobago. If your objective is the well-being of Trinidad and Tobago, then we know and we must acknowledge that the PNM is not in the best interest of the development of Trinidad and Tobago. And I tell people, if you want to be in a political party that will be in the interest of the citizens, then you will choose the UNC. I also tell people, when you vote, if you say you don't want to vote for the PNM or the UNC, vote for yourself. Vote for your children to get laptops. Vote for more jobs to be available. Vote so that when you have to go in the hospital there will be medication in the hospital. They will not have a long waiting list to get simple surgeries. That is what you vote for. You vote for yourself. So if you're talking about a politician who wants to contribute to the well-being of Trinidad and Tobago, then if that is your objective, then to me you will more readily cooperate and unite rather than if you have some sort of other motive,
So, MP Paray?
No, I mean, I want to fully endorse what Khadijah said. And I would also even add that we reach out to the PNM in the parliament. I mean, as an opposition party, I remember in the 11th parliament, we would reach out through, there are systems of, you talk behind the bench, behind the speaker's bench, as they say, that look, there are certain pieces of legislation, we're going to give you the support, we want some amendments. And there has always been collaboration. We would have always reached out. Now, in the 12th Parliament, something changed. Prime Minister Rowley has changed that he doesn't want to hear anything from the opposition. But I can tell you, as a political party, the United National Congress, we remain open to working with the government. We reach out to the PNM and say, look, we are willing to help in the interest of the country. But they are so, interested in showing the UNC that, we want your help. And, Dr. Rowley makes some of the most derogatory remarks on the political platform, what to go and do with your time. They really don't want to help. So besides reaching out to our own existing former UNC members, the door is always open. I remember the honorable political leader said that, the UNC has the biggest tent, and the tent will welcome every single body. All you have to do is cross the road. Cross the road and come and talk. And Khadijah rightly said there are those who let their ego get the best of them at times. I think everybody has a contribution to make. But according to the leader last night, it has to be with the best interests of Trinidad and Tobago. And we will always talk. So, I mean, for those who carry on a bit of the mischief at times, I mean, all we could tell them is, look, the doors remain open, United National Congress, together we win, divided we're going to lose. And that's the bottom line at the end of the day.
Can I say
Here's
something?
another
I'm a little
question.
surprised because I remember when Passan Barat said that he was for Country Before Party, the leader told him where to go.
Mr.
Yeah, well,
Park?
you see, I think that was, let's put that in context, Anselm. I remember that Mr. Barrett had worked with the PNM on this committee that they had. And he felt that he wanted to justify him as a former UNC minister working with the PNM government as doing so in the interests of the country. All the recommendations that that committee put forward were tossed aside. So, I mean, how does he feel as a person, as a professional, as a man, going forward, risking his political life, risking being called a grasshopper, risking jumping from the UNC to jump into the PNM, for your contribution to be tossed aside? Then that negates his argument about wanting to contribute to the country and that kind of thing. And I think having seen how the PNM treated him, treated his ideas and his suggestions and solutions, I think he is big enough to and intelligent enough to make a decision that, listen, the PNM is playing games. He stood at a place of prominence in the UNC once. He was a senator. In fact, he was appointed at the same time I was appointed, even in the opposition. So in the government, he was a senator and a government minister. And the leader in opposition, when she only had 6 senators, appointed him. So it means that he was seen as a person who could make a tremendous contribution to the party. And he chose to resign as a senator, as a UNC senator in opposition. He chose to resign from the party. Well, I don't know if he really officially resigned from the UNC, but he chose to go and work with the PNM. But, this is not about one person. I think that's in principle. In Trinidad, we don't like grasshoppers. We don't like people who jump from one party to another political party. It speaks volumes about their integrity. And so even now, I see the PNM parading councillors, former UNC councillors on their platform, and people look at them very distastefully because the poaching of UNC councillors to be your candidates tells me that you are short of the competence it takes to put good representatives from the PNM in those seats. And
Okay,
so
Khadijah,
we
wouldn't the UNC do the same?
But we do welcome persons to come on board and work.
But Khadijah, when the UNC do the same if they have 3 candidates who are top candidates in certain areas, and the UNC believe by them coming over to the UNC, they can now get control of more corporations now. When the UNC
No, I'm talking about former, the term of office expired. So you had former UNC councillors who served out their entire term as UNC,
like Sanka, for
and
example.
then crossed the floor. So you had one in Arima, you had one in San Fernando, and then they crossed the floor to go up on the PNM ticket. And this is not a case of a winning candidate crossing the floor with the seat to create a majority for another political party.
I understand that.
Yeah, so and I feel that if we are in a process now, both political parties are screening candidates. We are looking for the best person to send up. And I think it might be an indictment on the PNM. It might be an insult to the other nominees in the PNM that they are not good enough, and therefore the PNM has to reach across in the UNC and grab people. That is not our practice. And as I say, people are free to work in the interest of their community, in the interest of their country. But I think in Trinidad and Tobago, people look at your loyalty to political party seriously. I don't think they appreciate people jumping and crossing the floor and that kind of thing.
All right, so MP Parry, I'm going to get to you, but Khadijah, I want to agree with you. I mean, personally, when I looked at it, right, this is how I looked at it. If I'm in a PNM, I'm toiling for years upon years upon years, and I have interest in becoming a councillor. And when I see my great opportunity appears, all of a sudden, I see someone else come from the other side, and all of a sudden steps in front of me, and I'm put to the back of the bus again. I will have great difficulties with that. Yes. And any way it goes, I would have great difficulty with that, because it shows that you are not really loyal to me. You are just loyal to that person because you think that person can bring you a seat. While I've been toiling in the vineyard for you for years upon years upon years. So I totally agree with you.
It's an insult. You are telling the other PNM nominees that they are not good enough. It's an insult.
Not good enough. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree. MP Paray?
No, I agree totally with Khadijah on this one. I don't think there's much I can add. I think it was covered well. And I mean, it really shows that there is a lack of quality persons on the PNM's behalf. Everybody has a right to choose where they want to go home at the end of the day. If they are UNC counselors, former UNC counselors, Khadijah made the point, which is an important point. They are no longer UNC counselors. Their term has expired. They are free agents at the end of the day. They may have been part of the political machinery for the UNC. If they feel aggrieved in some way and they choose to find a home somewhere else, that is a matter for them. That is not a matter for the UNC. The UNC remains focused on getting the best candidates, to fill the best candidates who will sit in these corporations and bring the best goods and services to the Burgesses. So whoever jumps to the PNM and, whatever bacchanal happen inside there, that is their business. They go deal with that. Their internal, machinations will deal with itself. We in the UNC, we will remain focused. Our NATEX remain focused in screening the best candidates to bring us victory at the polls on August 14th.
And I must share with you that as a member of the screening committee, we have been screening region by region at the headquarters in Shogunas, and I am impressed with the quality of persons offering themselves as nominees. We have had people from different walks of life, people who have known in the party for decades, young people who are like second generation UNC. They grew up with their parents campaigning. They are professionals, they're well qualified, and they are offering themselves to serve at local government level. And I think the camaraderie at the headquarters, when you have the screening, people come early, they come with their tassa, they come with their music truck, they come with their families. You see a lot of families coming to support nominees. And what we always ask is that any person who is not nominee, who is not selected, we ask them to continue to work with the party and to continue to work with the candidate who is selected. So, we continue to function as a family. And I must say, I like the energy at headquarters when we have screening. We will have screening tomorrow, which is Wednesday again, and we'll have some big corporations coming down. You'll have a number of nominees, and we often go way past midnight for some of these larger regions. But certainly the quality of candidates, sometimes you have more than one excellent persons offering themselves, but the party could only choose one, so not being selected is not an indication that you are not suitable or that you are not good enough or that you are not appreciated. And so I think for me, as a person who screened in the past and was not successful, who contested elections and lost, and I know what that disappointment is like, I think it's important for me to encourage those who were not selected to continue to work and continue to be dedicated. If you love the party, if you love the politics, if you love your community, to continue to be dedicated, because not being selected the first time does not mean that you will never be selected. Not being selected for a councillor does not mean that there's not another role for you. And I've seen I've seen people come for screening, and because the party became aware of them, they offered to serve on committees, for instance, and they have been helping us to reach out and assist communities as a political party, but also based on the feedback from people all throughout the country to contribute towards our policies. And I think the leader has allowed all of us as MPs who shadow different ministries to engage with stakeholder groups. And many persons who first offer themselves as candidates stay and they end up functioning with one of these stakeholder groups or with these committees who help us put together more people-centered policies. So that when we offer a manifesto, it is based on real views of people who are affected, and that is what will become government policy when we win the election, the general election.
A question from the chat. Do squatters have to pay property tax too?
Yes, squatters. In fact, the Minister of Finance, Colm Imbert, responded to the opposition on this matter and made it very clear that once you have a structure on the land, whether it is a wooden structure, a dog kennel, a latrine, whatever it is, you must pay property tax on it. But paying property tax does not give you a right to the land. So if you are squatting, they will collect the tax from you, but it does not mean that you will get a certificate of comfort or any type of title document.
That's not fair. That's being the merchant of Venice. That's not fair.
That is
They will pay a minimum. They will pay a minimum of $540 per year a squatter. So that's what the amendment to the legislation that was done about a month ago, where the commissioner valuation can give a minimum AVR of $18,000 a year for any box that you live in. If it's a 10 by 10 box and it's on a piece of state land, he can put a 18,000 AVR value on that, which will mean that you as a squatter will be getting a bill for $540 per year to pay property tax for that box that you're in.
Yes.
And one more question from me. My things are in depth. What I see thus far from both of this question is posed to both of you, from both the political leaders of the opposition and the incumbent. I'm going to say that in the past, it seems as though the PNM seems to be made up of Afro-Trimbegonians mostly. The UNC of Indo-Trimbegonian. That seems to be the consensus. In the past, the two races seem to have united when they wanted independence from the colonizers. However, after independence, it seems as though some sort of seed of mistrust, got into in between there, and it causes what's the word? A rift. Can you promise the Trinidad and Tobago public that we're not going to see this derogatory name calling from your leader, and we're going to ask that of any PNM guests we have?
History speaks for itself. Compare Kamla Prasad Bisesa and Kit Rowley and the name calling and so on, in terms of misogyny and so in terms of racism. But you know what, as a person who is a product of a mixed marriage, I will tell you that I have personally experienced racism, and I personally feel offended whether a comment is made against a person of East Indian descent or a person of African descent, because I am a product of both. And I can tell you that the foundation of the UNC included people from different races. And because our the founding leader was Basdev Pandey, and his base was in the sugar belt, you had the East Indian laborers, and his base was primarily East Indian persons. But even in the formation, in the very first executive of the United National Congress, you always had persons of different races. In the Pandey government, in the Kamla Prasad Bisesa-led government, and even now on the national executive and so on. So for me, as a person of mixed descent working within the UNC, having come up the ranks, that is not an issue for me in terms of leadership at the level of the national executive, at the level of the constituency, and so on. And I do agree that the next generation will care even less about race, because you have people who are mixed in terms of our look, in terms of racial composition, but we also mix more in terms of socialization, so that you are more likely to have gone abroad and lived in other countries and interacted with other people from other countries who have different cultures. You are more likely to lime in Port of Spain or go to UWI together and share an apartment and so on. And I think what I have seen, and I have seen with my own eyes, that I find so hurtful, that the PNM uses race blatantly, especially on the East-West corridor, and they create a fear in their supporters of African descent, of East Indian people. And I see them using race and religion together. And so they equate whoever is UNC to be Indian, Hindu, and devil worshippers. And we are Christians, and therefore we do not accept the UNC because they are Indian and Hindu and devil worshippers. And they will say that to a mixed person who is Christian, like I am, without even thinking about it. And I remember once campaigning with a candidate named Richard Thomas in Aruka North. And the PNM's candidate was Jarrett Narain. And some boys passed by on a bicycle when we were trying to have a meeting in the basketball court in Shode Park, also called the Congo. And they said, we don't know Indian in here. And their candidate was Jarrett Narain. So it just goes to show how ridiculous the racism is, or any attempt to use race in a campaign is. And I think that the UNC has proven time and time again, especially when it was in government, that it governs for all. The PNM, I think what they do, they use the African and put the fear and the racism and so on. They do that, but they also do not seek the interest of who they call their base. They seek the votes of those of the base, but they do not address the key social issues that will cause that race to be empowered and improved. And so some of the areas that are in PNM constituencies where they get heartland support, where they get their votes, remain some of the most impoverished areas, some of the most at-risk areas in terms of crime and other social ills. So the truth is that I think if the PNM cared about anybody, they would have at least improved their constituents, regardless of their race, but we don't see that. They care about their constituents for votes. Who benefits when the PNM is in government? That is what you have to ask yourself. So it is not, to me, it is not about Indians and Africans trying to decide which political party operates in their interest. It is about every one of us as citizens deciding, what do I want for my children when they go to school? Do I want them to have to duck under a desk because there are guns outside? Do I want them to get shot in a recreation ground because they go on to play on a recreation ground in the community? Or do I want to possibly die before I get medical attention at the hospitals? And you vote for yourself. Because if you think about race and so on, you get caught up in the PNM's propaganda. And I think if people vote for themselves and vote for what is in their best interest and not study who wear what shoes and who talk about what, you will make the right decision.
I personally want to see a sense of attunement, harmony from both leaders. Well, I want to see that.
Right, Diana. I was going to add to that, and MP Paray, we're going to come to Khadijah. I agree with you. I am from Chumaka, Claventil. I left Chumaka, Claventil about 46 years ago. And when I come back to Trinidad today, Chumaka, Claventil is 100% worse than it was when I left. Me afraid to say that, plain talk, bad manners, but it's facts. When I'm speaking facts, people could get upset what they want. When I go back to my community of Chumaka, Claventil, and they have never forsaken the PNM, they have never voted for another party in all the years of politics in Trinidad and Tobago. And when you go into those communities, you ask yourself, well, why are these people still like that? But secondly, Khadijah, though, I think the responsibilities for race perspective is on both parties. The MPs may not be putting out that type of rhetoric with respect to race, but there's a lot of supporters of both parties on both sides of the political divide, that try to preach in this type of racial division, right? I can't say that there is any specific MP that I have heard that's preaching racial division. But I think from an overall perspective, when we look at both sides of the political divide, we have to understand at the end of the day, we are all Trinidadians. We are living in Trinidad and Tobago, and don't care what side you support, whether you support the UNC, the PNM, the
NP. And Anselm, you know what I have observed? I have observed that the PNM has...
I'm going to come to you just now.
I'm sorry, I just want to add, I've observed that the PNM has this social media barrage of fake profiles with that has been peddling and getting into a lot of arguments with on Facebook and other social media. And to me, this is just one of the ways that they use race and they say, well, oh, it's not me. But the truth is, I mean, on the ground, we know that the PNM uses race a lot to the extent where it slipped from the lips of one of their leaders on the platform in the past. And no apology came, and when they talk about the Calcutta ship and that kind of thing. So when we talk about Trinidad and Tobago, when we talk about unity, when we talk about every creed and race find an equal place, I mean, the PNM has been using that sort of division to just raise that kind of ignorance and immaturity and prejudice and so on in people, because it strikes an emotional chord. But I think we as citizens have to stand up to it and say, listen, this is not acceptable. The fact is that when the UNC is in government, every part of the country benefits in terms of development. Every group of citizens benefit in terms of social improvement, and that is what we have to look at. Whether, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of geographic location, the truth is that the UNC is the only political party that spreads the resources of the country, of the state, through every part of the country in Trinidad as well as in Tobago, including the areas that have voted for PNM historically and have been abused by the PNM. So if we are to look beyond race and look at performance, I think we will also know that the UNC performs fairly when it comes to that kind of thing.
So MP Rushton.
I just want to add a couple of things. Again, Khadijah is on the ball. I am very impressed with the responses myself, But Paul King Douglas said that racism is everywhere. You just have to go look for it, right? If you look for it, you're going to find it. Anselm, if you walk in Mayaro and you walk into the rum shops, you walk into the supermarket, you go to a family gathering, you see every creed and race participating. Is there racism in and about the society? Absolutely. But again, you have to go look for it, because I would go into communities and you are accepted. I mean, I, as a young Hindu man, I will go to temple, church, mosque. I will go to spiritual Baptist, Orthodox, ceremonies, and you are welcome, you are accepted. And, you would ask yourself, well, where is this issue of race and the race baiting coming from? And I mean, as you rightfully said, it comes on the political platform. More often, as Khadijah said, from on some of the PNM platforms, she made it quite clear on that. But I want to pinpoint one thing, that we are a young nation. We are a very young nation. I believe in my heart that in another generation or two, this issue of race as a boogeyman will not be a tool for political parties anymore. And I want to use this example of the United States. In the 1920s and 30s, the most vilified people were the Chinese, the Asians, the Irish. And today, I mean, you walk into a store, you go into Comp USA in America, and you are East Indian man, or automatically you think you are a businessman, you are a mathematician. These races were able to work within the system, and they were able to get out of that, you call them chinks and hinks and spinks and so on. But the United States is 270-something years old. Now, I remember a couple of years ago watching a movie, and Anselm, you may be familiar with this movie called Blazing Saddles with Cleavon Little. I think he has a Trinidadian background somewhere.
Yep.
And the movie back in the 70s was, one of those movies where they use the N-words rather loosely. It's a comedy by Mel Brooks. And I mean, as a child, I grew up looking at a movie, very hilarious. So a year or two ago, my daughters were home during the pandemic. So I went on Netflix and I saw the movie, and I said, hey, girls, come, look, this is a very hilarious movie. I kid you not, within the first half an hour of that movie, the girls got up and they left. They said, Daddy, that is nonsense. There can be, I mean, how can you sit and listen? They use the derogatory terms like that. And I mean, my children, and I suspect their peers of their generation, you can't peddle that racial boogeyman to them because they have no interest in it. And this is why I feel in another generation, their children will have no conversation about that. So I think the future is still bright for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. We are saddled with the past of our foreparents, that issue coming off, the boat and the slave plantation, and so I think we're still grappling with that as a society. But I truly believe in a generation or two that will not be an issue that we will deal here in Trinidad and Tobago. And I mean, I won't be around, but I suspect, taking the tone from my girls, I suspect that their children will not have this issue to deal with Because as
Mr.
Khadijah,
Parr,
we're
Mr.
working
Parr, I
on it.
want to tell you, you left out one race that was vilified and is still being vilified today, the African.
Yeah, yeah.
So here is a last comment from the chat. This is the last question here. A person says, why are there so many objections to the PNM initiatives by the opposition?
Oh, well, let me tell you, what I have seen is that the PNM continues to say that the UNC is not cooperating. So very recently, they said that, I mean, there are so many examples. Recently, I read out a list in Parliament. For instance, when it comes to crime fighting, we are very willing to cooperate with the government on crime fighting initiatives. There are a number of pieces of legislation that the PNM brought that the UNC said, okay, let us sit down and improve on it, make amendments, as is the norm in Parliament. When the UNC was in government, we had a special majority in Parliament, but we still would sit down with the opposition senators, and Faris Alwari was one of the opposition senators. We would sit at the joint select committees and make adjustments, make amendments, and then go to Parliament and vote on the legislation. We don't have that from the PNM. So there are always improvements to be made. And there are certain things that require a special majority that all they do is take out the clause that says it needs a special majority. So where it needs a special majority is where it interferes on your constitutional rights, your right to privacy, your right to freedoms, certain freedoms that are guaranteed in the Constitution. But they don't do that. So what you find is that they come and say it's my way or the highway. And it is a norm in Parliament for amendments to be brought either at the joint select committee levels or at the level after the debate. You have a committee where the Parliament goes into committee stage and you find amendments coming from both sides, and therefore you can go forward in an amenable way. A lot of legal minds have been raising concerns about some of the constitutional implications of some of these laws. So it is incorrect to say that the UNC did not support, for instance, the anti-gang legislation. Even when it came to legislation to authorize the government to tap your phones and so on, we raised concerns, but we were prepared to support it. And even when we said, okay, we will support the anti-gang legislation, because the government said on more than one occasions, we have all the information, we know who are the gang leaders, we have surveillance on them. As soon as this is law, the UNC is preventing us from arresting these people because they will not vote for it. And we agreed to vote for it. And the question is now, how many gang leaders have you arrested and charged under this new legislation? So you see, it is a fallacy that they have created to try to blame the opposition for their incompetence. There are several pieces of legislation that required a special majority that the UNC voted for. There are several pieces that did not even require our support to become law that we supported. But even recently, I heard them saying that the UNC objected to local government reform. We have been fighting local government reform, and that is why they have not been able to reform local government. That is crap, because the fact is that it is law. They passed the legislation more than a year ago. They have not done anything. All it needed was a simple majority. They used their simple majority. It is now law. Account to the country for what you have done in terms of local government reform. Account to the country for what you have done in terms of using the anti-gang legislation to your advantage. How many gangs have you dismantled? How many gang leaders have you arrested? Even when you talk about the citizens giving up their right to privacy by allowing the government to spy on you and so on. So, we have to be balanced in terms of what we are giving up and what we are receiving. We are not seeing the results that the PNM is talking about, but what we are seeing them doing is try to blame the UNC. So to this day, they are saying that the murders is spiraling out of control because the UNC did not support the anti-gang legislation. We objected to certain portions at the beginning, and we begged the government to change it. And then we said, listen, even if you don't want to change it, we are giving you the power. But they have not made the inroads into crime fighting like they were supposed to. So they are still saying we did not support it. And it's not true. So I think that is just their way of trying to throw off the blame and blame the UNC for their incompetence, because murders are out of control. We have home invasions, you have people being robbed, you have women being raped, kidnapped, raped, and murdered brutally, dumped in forested areas, and so on. And there doesn't seem to be any solution to reduce crime from the government.
So let's go over to this will be the last one. Let's go over to MP Paray.
Well, the job of the opposition is not to rubber stamp legislation for the government. That's not our role. Our role is to review the legislation, poke as much holes into it, show the government where the weak areas are, and we advise them that, look, you ought to change these parts and you will get our support. It is up to the government now to agree or disagree with our assessment of the legislation. You see, there are many people in this country believe that the government must bring legislation and we must, support it and without reviewing. And so that's not our role. Our role is to review the legislation, and especially legislation that infringes with Section 4 and 5 of the Constitution. We must never give up certain rights as a country, because there's too much areas, history recorded where people gave up rights and what end up happening. We cannot go down that road. And I mean, to the person who posted the question, I would have loved to get an example, to respond to one example that they felt that the UNC did not support the government. We talk about the bail amendment, we talk about anti-gang, but we have a detection rate of less than 10%. So if we're not catching these fellas, bail is not an issue. If we're not getting the cases before the court to charge these boys for the anti-gang, put in legislation, there is of no reason. Now, when these legislation come, we ask, listen, show us the data. You want an extension for another 2 years? Show us the data. Perhaps there are other areas you need to look at to strengthen before you get there. But the government takes an approach that they want no advice from nobody. They are the smartest people in the world, and that's why they keep losing every single case. I mean, the current Attorney General, I really thought that we couldn't get worse than the previous. And this man is messing up legislation, losing files. I can't understand how he is the defender of democracy sitting in the parliament. And that's the challenge we have. But we remain committed as an opposition to continue to work in the best interest of all the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And our role is to act in defense of the Constitution by looking at legislation, ensuring that the government doesn't infringe on the rights of people. And the lady in the group here, Diane, she made an earlier point that, was skirted, that we worked very hard in Marlborough House. Dr. Williams and Dr. Capildeo, they worked very hard in Marlborough House to come up with an agreement that would allow us for self-governance. And the Constitution was written in a way based in the 1960s of that mistrust, and they wanted to find a middle ground that as we grew as a country, we could revisit the Constitution and we could change certain things. I look forward to the day. I mean, we have shelf lives of 5 years at a time. I would love to see the day where the parliamentarians, all 41 of us, can sit down and say, well, look, there are things in the Constitution that we ought to change for the betterment of the country. I always say, we are a 19th century parliamentary system. We are trying to serve a 21st century audience, but we are constrained by a Cold War relic called the Civil Service Act. And you will change government every Monday morning, and we will get nowhere. So as a country, coming back to law, legislation, supporting, the United National Congress, we go into government in 2025. I assure you, part of our policy will be to look at constitutional reform.
But in 2010, you said that.
Yes. Well, I tell you this. We have started to document our plans for 2025. A point that you had made just now about continuing projects from previous administration. Mm-hmm. We were discussing just this week, perhaps in our plans, in our manifesto in 2025, we are going to make a commitment to the people of Trinidad and Tobago that we will put it into law, that any project done by a government must be continued under law until completion. Because in that way, we will not have taxpayers' money making, as people say, anchar, and nothing is happening. So we are aggressively looking at governance in 2025 going on. We have committees that have been set up. We are looking at all components of governance. We're talking about intelligent municipalities that is going to bring government services to your municipality as part of our local government reform suggestion. You should not have to go to San Fernando, Port of Spain to get a passport renewed. You should be able to do it in Rio Claro. When you do that, we bring more young people back to Rio Claro, Mayaro, with their families to live. We get more family time. We deal with babies. We don't have to hire nannies to watch your children until 8 o'clock in the night. So there's a whole social reform that we are looking at and we are planning holistically for the development of Trinidad and Tobago from 2025 and beyond. I'm very excited to be part of that. And at another occasion, perhaps, we'd be happy to come and discuss some of those plans that we have for 2025 and beyond. So we look forward to winning that general election in 2025. I think we have what it takes.
You know, I want to say, when we first thought about this, we didn't know it would have worked out so well, you know. but I mean, I thought it worked out very, very, very well. I got to be honest with you. I think it worked out very well. And I think we have to have a little more of this, of not just one individual, but hearing from, you know, two sides of the spectrum. You know, and I think this was splendiferous. This is just my opinion.
Yeah, Rushton, when you not here, this fella that's gang up on me, you know, that fella. yeah, he's a feeling, but I really enjoyed the discussion. So I do. Yeah.
No, Khadijah, you was plentiful. You and Rushton was plentiful tonight.
I appreciated your you inviting us as a guest. I appreciate the invitation to share with you the party's policies, my experience on the ground and going forward, because I've been involved in the party from my adult life, from the beginning of my adult life, and I have progressed in the party, and I really want to see the party go in a certain direction in terms of the future of the country. So whether I am there or not, as Rushton said, we all have shelf lives of 5 years at a time. But it is something that I want to see the party as an institution grow stronger and stronger in whatever capacity I have to support that in. But I also want to see us as a nation grow stronger and more united and more fixated on the core issues rather than the superficial things, just what is in a name and so on. But really, can we get to the bottom of the social is what causes the social issues, what causes crime, what causes poverty? You know, can we get to the bottom of truly lifting and empowering those communities that have been labeled as at-risk communities? I mean, you know, that kind of thing. I would really like to see us as a nation seek the interest of our communities and our country.
So I want to say thank you so much to MP Khadijah Ameen and MP Rushton Paray for taking, you know, we took a little bit here, but we took some time, but it was important that we get both of you in and talk about different issues facing the country. And at the end of the day, you know, for us out here in the diaspora to hear from you, and this is the first time we have done this, as a matter of fact, this is the first time we have done this since we have been on the air and since we have been running this program. So you guys are actually the trailblazers as far as having two MPs from a party, you know, on WZYE 95.9 FM. And we really appreciate that you guys took the time to share with us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ameen, and thank you, Mr. Paray.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Good night.
So that was pretty good.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah, I thought that was
somebody said Khadijah Ameen to lead the party.
She's smooth. She's smooth.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I think with Rushton there, Khadijah get real smooth, boy. No, seriously, you know.
She has matured a lot.
Oh God, why?
What?
Last time she was here to know, she real smooth now, boy. Like I helped she. You see, I helped she.
Rennie say all he want for Christmas is he back pay.
No, but you see, Tommy and Diana, you see, that's why we say we originate, we don't imitate. You know, we think we had a good discussion, and there is more for us to come, and there's so much more for us to talk about, right? You know, and you know, we definitely have to have them back. I'm going to try to get two other
I wasn't,
individuals.
I
to
wasn't
apply.
pleased. I wasn't pleased with the answer concerning my good friend. What's his name again?
Hmm.
Who's that? Gary Griffith?
No, go to hell.
Oh, oh.
Or Naked?
No, the one who told Kamala that he's for country before party.
Vashan Bharat.
But
Well, I mean, I that was a political answer, you know what I mean?
yeah, she did. She said she called him a grasshopper.
Yeah,
Next time they come, I want to ask them when we're gonna get an apology from KPB for reminding me that I have a slave master name. I ain't forgive she yet, you know.
But listen to this. I think what's important, right, is that when people come on a program, right, I think they want to, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, right? I don't think the last time Khadijah was say I badgered. I might have had to ask her some tough questions, you know, but I want them to feel like, listen,
Comfortable, yeah.
when you're coming here, you're gonna have tough questions. And let me say this, I didn't give any of them any questions. Tommy didn't give them no questions, and that.
Me neither.
We don't give people questions.
Nope.
You have questions beforehand, don't come here, go elsewhere. Right? We want you to come in, you prepare yourself to answer any question that deals with Trinidad and Tobago. Is that
Take bois?
Yeah.
Community Gael is bois.
Yeah, community Gael, man, is bois, man. Bois. So folks, put closing comments in the chat. Just put closing comments in the chat. It's bois. And you know, Tommy, just think about it, I guess the reason why the PNM people feel that they don't have to come because they're in power. Right? You think I'm off base there?
True.
And they don't like you.
Nah, liking me doesn't have anything to do. Right, Diana, they might not more like you than they might like me.
No, they don't like you. You going against them. I don't belong to them. I just say what God says. You kicking them. You kicking them, and you like a thorn in their side.
I'm not going against them. I just talking facts.
Well, you're not supposed to do that.
A man called a radio station today and tried to denounce what I said about 3% tax. Yeah, okay. And I just understand with them fellas, I don't understand how that fella could come and say 3% for a person who live in Westmoreland is the same as 3% for a person who live in Chumaka, Clavantel. But the values will be different. And I'm asking myself, I never said anything about the values being different. You know, anybody knows that a house in Westmoreland, right, and a house in Chumaka, Clavantel will be of way different value.
Now you understand why the Trump supporters base, because a question was asked of a Trump supporter. Why did Barack Obama, why you think 9/11 happened? Why did Barack Obama allow that to happen? And the Trump supporter said, well, he just wasn't doing his job right. So you understand? You understand what's going on?
Was not in power at
He wasn't in power. Well, I did that.
Listen to this.
And he said with a thick southern drawl, well, Barack Obama, he was there. He just let them come in here and do what they wanted. I said, oh, Father God. And
it blew my mind to see that. If you are from the urban areas in Trinidad and you're going to say, I don't understand, we're going to go for a quick station identification, you're going to say that a person in Westmoreland paying 3%, you don't have a problem with you living in Pinal D Bay, Mova, Lavantel, or San Juan. You don't have a problem paying 3% tax. When you know that for a fact, whether that's additional $45 a month, that is going to have an effect on your bottom line. And not only that, but if you're renting and the landlord have to pay an additional $45 a month, who you think going to have to pay that? Who you think?
The tenant.
There we go, the tenant.
The tenant.
So when them coming with this sort of stupidness to defend party, and talking about, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, 3% there. Anyway, let me go for a quick station identification. Folks, Put closing comments in chat.
You are listening to WZYE LP 95.9 FM, Maplewood, New Jersey, broadcasting from Essex County.
You are listening to WZYE 95.9 FM, the most influential name in Caribbean radio in New Jersey for talk, news, sports, and information. The Caribbean.
Yeah, you know, I'm telling people that 3% tax in Trinidad is regressive and oppressive to poor people. Because this is it. Now, after you pay 3% for the first year, does it stay at 3% the next year?
Nope. Mine went up the other day. So
Tommy, does it stay at 3%?
Well, I just hope, I don't know what it's going to stay at, but I just hope that it gets thrown out the window some kind of how.
It had to get through out the window. Listen, let them people in Westmoreland pay 8% property tax and let the people up in them poor areas pay 1% or less tax. The property tax in New York is average of less than 1%. When people hear
when they're gonna repeal it all together. I mean, say in 2025 when they win, Paray and I mean, say in 2025 when they win, they're gonna repeal it all together.
Well, I think they should pay some property tax. But Tommy, let me say this, and I'm gonna go to the chat. Tommy, say you have a little piece of land put on up in Tuco somewhere, right?
He does.
You're paying land tax for it, right? Right? Because you have to pay land tax, right? Now they come and they impose property tax in there. Suppose you have a nice piece of 3 or 4 piece of acres up there. They say, oh boy, wow.
6 acres.
Tommy, 6 acres. Tommy have, 6 acres on a mule. Is that what it is? 6 acres, Tommy. They say, what boy, Tommy? They come and do a site inspection. All right, Tommy. I think you could get about 8,000 a month here, I feel so.
But Slim, watch now. Look a loophole open here. Them that have cocoa in the sand. You have property up here, you have property down there. They go come out here for more. Yeah, that right.
Yeah.
There's a loophole they can exploit. Hold on, let me not put ideas in the head.
Ideas and people. Yeah. So Tommy, your 6 acres now. We have an annual rental value for you. And the other thing is this. People say, well, there's a 10% deduction based on the annual rental value. Okay. I said the annual rental value.
ARV.
Whatever it is, whatever the deduction is, here is the value that we are going to put the 3% on.
I want to know how they're going to get into the middle of the forest to see that I have 6 acres in the middle of
They go come and peep over the fence.
It's not a drone.
Yeah, they go peep over the fence. Remember Khadijah Ameen said they peep over somebody's fence?
No, well, there are no fences. As a matter of fact, they have to come good to determine where the boundary line is too.
But they go tongue and country planning and figure that out, Tommy. Come on.
It's not a drone, Tommy.
Oh, yeah,
and aerial maps and whatnot are available.
Yeah, you're right.
Next thing you got an invoice in the mail, boy.
Yeah, boy.
Your rental value, $8,000 a month, $96,000 for the year, Tommy. You owe.
And look, don't let her get an idea to put it on annual rental value of your total asset combined. Where we have it all over the place, huh?
Nah,
Lord Father.
They said Tommy could afford that.
Yeah, and said they're gonna hit you hard for Snake Alley. Oh, you own anything up in Snake Alley still?
And
I know they're gonna say you are affiliated with that guy Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
Money you can always get a loan from him.
Yeah. Hey, Eileen says, Ansem, how can you pay tax on something you own? What does he mean by that?
Well, you've been paid. That's a question I asked too. You work, they take out taxes from your salary. You use the same money, you go on and shop with, you still have to pay tax for goods that you already pay tax on, right? And then you're going now on a property that you own, you bought, you have to pay taxes continually on it, but you pay taxes when you bought it. Jeez, sorry.
So yeah, Diana, yeah, Vonnie Roberts. Good night to all those locked I hope that you all were very impressed with the two UNC personals.
That Vonnie pitching for your party, boy.
Consider voting for you. Let's include Anselm and Tommy. I know he exclude you, Diana.
What we say? He said vote for me?
Yeah, he says, good night to all that's locked. I hope that you all were impressed with the two UNC personal. They were excellent. So consider voting for the yellow. This include Anselm and Tommy. He didn't include you.
That ain't even in the conversation. You see, you're a bacchanalist.
If you look
You
at
already know that we are on the voters list.
It's not in the bid. That's not in his comment. You're a bacchanalist.
No, it's on the screen.
But I can read and I don't see it on the screen.
Yeah.
You already put our name in the website and know where we registered to vote.
But look, Tommy wearing a blue shirt. So we're telling me about UNC. If there's anybody, if you all see the color of the dress I wearing tonight, now you'll say what?
What you have?
If we go by the colors we wearing, I know who Anselm voting for David. That shade of black.
Come on, Storm. Let's see your colors.
Huh? No, you don't want to. I only show the pattern on the dress, not me.
Isn't PDP black?
Well, let's see.
You want to see the pattern on the dress? Look, see?
Okay. Isn't PDP black?
What?
PDP. Them is
PDP black?
Yeah, I mean black.
Is that a hint? You going with your friend? But wait now, Mr. Duke say he wants his own session
after the election.
Yeah.
Oh God, you're mean. That ain't right.
I taking Tommy advice.
That ain't right at all, Tommy. That ain't right. I thought we giving everybody a fair chance. I thought you said that your mantra is whatever color shirt you wear could come in the village. Why you stifling the black?
Capiza says, Ansem, you're sounding like a traitor. We in the PNM will deal with traitors. I don't know why you say we, you know.
Capiza.
Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with that fella, you know. Says, Ameen should be leadership of the UNC. She can speak on points. Yeah,
she's smooth. She's very smooth. She's
doing well. I'm gonna lie. She really improved. She really improved.
She's been groomed well.
She's been taking good lessons, boy. So, folks, here's my closing quote. Happiness comes when we stop complaining about the troubles we have and offer thanks for all the troubles we don't have. So happiness comes when we stop complaining about the troubles we have and offer thanks for all the troubles we don't have. From where I said, this is it. The clock on the wall said that's all I like to say, but I've got to go. Remember, hard work beats talent when talent does not work hard. And for every 60 seconds of anger, we lose 1 minute of happiness. See you. Same WZ time, same WZYE channel. Go ahead, Diana.
Hi. I would like to see from the two major political parties and other players in the game a tone of attunement. All right. I want that tone of attunement because it will trickle down into the population. I don't want the derogatory name calling. I don't want the racial stereotyping because you're seeing it seeping into society. It's already there. But if they see their leaders, partake in it and freely and, endorse it, then, it could spread like a cancer. A tone of attunement, more harmony is needed right now. Trinidad and Tobago, despite you're vying for each other's seats. This is your poet and your the Onyx Wave. Remember, you all have to vote for me. The Onyx Wave in the upcoming National Spoken Word Awards here in Chicago. Now, it is not going by talent only. If it was just performing, I would go up there and do my best. But I need counts. I need you all to vote for me, please. Send it to 10 people and vote. Continue voting till August 12th. Is it, Anselm? Vote for the Onyx Wave. Thank you.
Okay, Tommy.
You're welcome.
Where, Tommy?
I'd like to say that there's only one race, the human race. Again, you have to be the change that you want to see. You have to look, it all begins with the man in the mirror. Remember, if you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, don't blame the mirror. Again, remember that it starts and ends with you.
Thank you, Tom.
I'm kind of freezing here, but
Yeah.
basically I want to say, don't look down on a man unless you're giving him a hand to pick him up. All right?
Thank you.
Love you all. Be safe out there. See you the next session.
Thank you. Okay, let me get some closing comments in here. Okay. Rennie says, live, love, laugh, ingredients to long life. Judy says, I applaud both of you, Ameen and Paray, most interesting indeed. What is that? Diana, you have to pay tax for Stormy resting place.
We rest in place. I'll be able to just cremate them and pelt the ashes somewhere.
You send that to the Reddy said that. Reddy. Sleep, Reddy, yes.
Rennie said that?
Yeah, Roseville.
I will send him by you and bury him in your yard.
Rose says, yes, Bonnie, you pay tax when you buy also during the time you own the property. And if you sell and the government sends out a value and tax you again. It's tax if you fart too hard in this place. Oh God, Rose says tax if you fart too hard. Good night, Nadia. Good night, blessings. I'm gonna tie my dog on a pole. I wonder if I have to pay tax to the pole.
Oh,
Rennie said, I'm going to tie my dog on a pole. I wonder if I have to pay tax for the pole. Was it a pay tax for the tax?
They say if you have a dog house on the squatting land, you have to pay for that too. I wonder how did it? You have to pay 3% for that too, right, Angela?
3% minimum, 540.
Oh, wow. 3% of 540 is what?
No,
One
3%
something?
3% of 18,000, which is 540.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Lee Jean says, closing comment. I've listened intensely to both MPs. It's all about a political party talking politics. But that's what it is.
1,800 or 18?
Yeah.
3%. It's 1,800.
Anderson Pancham says, hi, Nadira. You're a regular on the live chat. You're really committed. Okay, that's
who's that? Who is it? Nadira? Nadia, somebody saying hello, girl.
Guys, Nadia, yeah. Heidi says, before property tax, you own the land. After property tax, the government is the new owner, and you did not pay. Instead, you're paying the government. Yeah, tax lien. Go talk about that too, tax lien.
Yeah, tax lien.
Wait, what Rennie say he got? Diana gonna pay what?
You go pay the tax here. Whatever tax it is. If you tie the dog to the pole, you go pay the tax for you, the dog, and the pole.
How much I could occupy? 5 acres? Hey, Rennie, mine a hold you to that, huh? Okay. And Stormy don't want no small choke up dog house, eh? He wants a duplex.
He want to run till he get tired.
Nadia said, blessed night, everyone. Stay safe. Keep away from the flood. Ken John says, good night, Diana. And Tommy, be safe, you guys. Shalom and God bless. God bless. God be with you till we meet again. Thank you very much.
Nadia, next show, I'll see if I can put Stormy on. Let's see him. How fat he get?
Yeah. Good night, everyone. Rose says, good night, everyone. Be safe. What?
So what's we going on with now?
If your enemies live next door, is they your neighbor?
Yep.
Eileen, they're your neighbor.
They're your neighbor. We're just not friends.
If you live next door, yeah. Go out to the Juke, Satan in control. Good night, folks. Take care. See you on Thursday.
Oh, yes. Somebody help. Come and put a hand. Come and wipe away the blight and see what the plight that befall the man of this land. What's going on here? I would like to know why the whole world is in a turmoil. So it look as if we fire God from the job and give the work to the Beelzebub. Man, the devil have a hand in running the land. The devil have a hand in running the land. You don't have to never like understand. The devil have a hand in running the land. The devil have a hand in running the land. The devil have a hand in running the land. You don't have to never like understand. Like if Satan in control of running the land. Hey man, oh man. Only wars and rumors of wars, incurable disease go from sea to seas and they happen without a cause. Strange phenomena now happen everywhere. The callousness of this world has the world in fear. Politics and weaponry have taken its toll. They have the whole world out of control. Man, the devil have a hand in running the land. The devil have a hand in running the land. It don't happen here, well I can understand like it. Oh yes man. Running the land. The devil have a hand in running the land. You think of an well, I can understand like it.